Okay, so I think we'll call the regular meeting of Township Council for Monday, March 11th to order. With that, of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, our valued relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. With that, could I get a motion to, actually, I'll move the agenda amended to add additional delegation C5. Is there a seconder? That's seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on the agenda? None, I'll call a question on A1. That carries unanimously. Get a motion, please, to adopt the regular meeting minutes from February 26th. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion? None. I'll call a question on B1. That carries unanimously. A motion to adopt the public hearing meeting minutes from February 26th. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. No discussion. Call the question on B2. That carries unanimously. We have a delegation from BC Hydro. Do you wish to come forward and delegate together? Yeah, please come forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just testing the microphone and
There
sound.
we go. There we are. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just testing microphone and sound. Well, thank you very much for having us this afternoon. My name is Diana Stevenson, and I serve as the Senior Vice President of Customer and Corporate Affairs. I will just briefly let my colleague introduce herself, and then we will go through our presentation.
Hi, I'm Maureen Daschuk. I'm the Executive Vice President of Integrated Planning, and I was just asked to remind you that we have the first two delegations today. Thank you.
Great. Go ahead.
Great. Well, what an opportune time it is to be sitting before you today and to have a conversation about something that is not only near and dear to our heart at BC Hydro, but is increasingly on the minds of citizens across the Lower Mainland and across the province. And that really is the changing landscape we're operating in today from an energy perspective. From all levels of government, we're seeing policy changes, policy reflections. In addition to the commitment to decarbonization, what that means for our electricity grid here in British Columbia, we also recognize that consumer expectations are changing with respect to their own individual footprint, whether that is their home heating source or means of transportation. Those pieces are impacting our system and having us think a little bit differently about how we're planning going forward. We're also in the midst of a large growing population, and with that comes a commitment to housing, a commitment to build, and an increasing focus on building the infrastructure needed to take care of our citizens. We're also continuing to see climate change in all of its forms and needing to ensure both our supply and our system are resilient in the face of that. So the energy transition itself is a really interesting topic here in British Columbia. There is a role, whether it's molecules or megawatts, there is a role for many different types of energy in the path going forward. Where we are at right now is really that transition period to be thinking about the highest and best use of our energy resources while also balancing the focus on decarbonization. So one of the slides that we've just put out here, it's a bit of an interesting take in terms of the overall mix of British Columbia's energy footprint today. So what you'll see on the slide is our total energy footprint as British Columbia incorporates electricity from renewable energy sources, largely large hydroelectric facilities, and that is, of course, the role of BC Hydro. We also have in the mix bioenergy, RNG, natural gas, and petroleum. And what you see on the screen, care of our partners in the provincial government, is really an overview of a possible pathway. And what you're really seeing is an uptake anticipated over the next couple of decades with respect to the growing adoption of clean electricity. You're seeing a slight rise and then a fall, for example, in the role of natural gas, a growing area for their focus, of course, being RNG. And then most notably, and this really relates to the transportation, I would say transformation that we're seeing, is a dropping in the reliance on petroleum. So all of these things have implications for BC Hydro. We have been around for over 100 years. We have been planning the system throughout that time, going through the booms, the busts, the cycles, the many different forms of where our province has been growing. But we are now at a really unique point in time where we need to be thinking about what that future system growth looks like. So on that note, I'm going to hand it back over to my colleague Maureen, and she's going to walk you through our planning processes.
Thank you. One of the things I think is important for us at BC Hydro is to appreciate that the future is uncertain and that we have to plan for a number of different potential scenarios. When I look at the graphic that's on the screen, you'll notice that the demand for electricity has been pretty flat between 2003 and 2023. So for the last 20 years, we haven't seen significant increase in demand, despite the fact the province has been growing. And that's a great news story in terms of the importance of energy efficiency in keeping the demand flat. But when we look forward, we see at least 3 different possible scenarios, and we'll likely see the demand for electricity falling within those different ranges. And we have to be ready no matter what the future holds. One of the things that we're doing to be ready is to bring on Site C. We have 30 hydroelectric plants that are currently operating, and the plan is for us to start filling the reservoir at Site C in the fall of this year. And it will be up in service by 2025. Once Site C is operational, it will add about 8% of the total capacity that we have. And that's enough to power nearly 500,000 homes or 1.7 million electric vehicles. But Site C alone is not going to be enough when we think about the energy transition, and so we are announcing a call for clean and renewable power. That announcement is we'll be issuing the call in early April is the current plan, and we're asking for 3,000 gigawatt hours per year of new renewable generation, and those projects would be online as soon as 2028. And I can tell you that last week the BC Utilities Commission approved that process, so we're quite excited about that. That's also expected to be the first in what's likely to be a series of power calls that we'll be having to make sure that we have enough clean power for all of our customers. Generation isn't going to be enough. We are going to have to build out the power system that we have in the province, and we've also announced a significant increase in our 10-year capital plan, and that includes spending money to take care of the assets that we already have and that we've made those investments in, plus another $10 billion that's going to help us with helping people who are using carbon-based fuels to switch to clean electricity, and then another $5 billion that will help with just the growth that's happening, new housing, that type of thing. If we zoom in from the big picture of the $36 billion down into a regional view, I can tell you that about $7.2 billion of that $36 billion is going to be spent in the Lower Mainland. That's going to support housing growth, residential electrification, electrification of transit, and industrial customers. And we recognize that many of our municipalities, including Langley, are experiencing growth, and we want to highlight that that's a big part of our plan going forward. If I zoom down a little bit further and look at Langley, the township of Langley is going to be seeing a number of significant investments. So to put it in perspective, out of the $36 billion that we plan to spend across the entire province, between $500 million and $700 million of that is going to be spent right here in Langley. And that's going to be including the growth for the Willoughby, Brookswood, and Gloucester areas, and we're going to be adding or moving our voltage up from 12 kV up to 25 kV. So in terms of the work that we're doing, the existing McClellan substation is going to get expanded. The Campbell Heights and Brookswood will be a new substation. Willoughby, Clayton, a new substation. And as I mentioned, we'll be making significant investments in the distribution system, including those voltage conversions.
Great. And at the very end of each of those assets and each of those wires is the role that our customers are going to be increasingly playing. So for the past 3 decades, we've actually been incredibly active in the energy efficiency or demand side management space, where customers can really participate in lowering their overall energy and electricity footprint. We continue down that path with some new and exciting tools we'll be offering in the years ahead. That includes some new voluntary rate structures that really promote using electricity at off-peak times to help us balance balance the needs on our grid, providing capital incentives to customers to make sure that they can be looking at things like solar opportunities and batteries over the next period of time, and then really looking at other demand-side management tools that customers can use in their home over time to really not only track their energy, but make conscious energy choices and reductions where they can. So rising to the challenge, one of the interesting pieces that we are learning quite intimately as we go through this period of energy transition, to use an overused phrase, it truly takes a village, and it takes partnerships with municipalities, with permitting agencies, with the provincial government, with customers, with different groups of all shapes and sizes to really come together and think about what this next era of building looks like. So we have shared goals. We all want to get work done. We want to roll up our sleeves. We want to invest in the infrastructure that's needed to support a growing population. And we also support and recognize that it's our partnerships with municipalities such as yourself that are quite mission critical in getting that done. So with that, we are very pleased to be here and to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation and for being here. Two questions and then one comment, and the comment is I'm happy to hear just the kind of scale of the investment in Langley. That's pretty exciting. Glad to know that we're not an afterthought by the sounds of things, so that's great. The one first question, and it might not be a fair one for this kind of setting, but part of this capital plan that's coming online, is there a piece of it that will focus on the sort of the little less ribbon-cutting-y projects, like trying to make sure that when we are doing a road project here in the township, we can make sure that it's expedited as quickly as possible so that we're not having to widen the road and have poles sticking up waiting. Is there a plan to speed up that process, or is there any kind of investment that's going to come down the pipeline on that front?
I think the best approach for us is to have some joint planning sessions with the people who are doing the asset planning, giving you lots of advance notice of what we're planning to do. These are, there are some ribbon cutting types of opportunities with some new substations, but I think there's also just some basic building new lines that go to where we need them to get to, which are not ribbon cutting types of things. And the more we can coordinate, I think that would be beneficial. One of our goals is to find ways to do this quickly, but also affordably, because $36 billion is, it'll only go so far, surprisingly. It sounds like a large number, but the more we can work together to be efficient, I think it would be better.
And that's great. And I think for me, one of the challenges is the lines that are already there that we just need to move or relocate. And so that would be a high priority, I think, for a lot of council, I would hope.
Yeah, I can say that there's been very strong advocacy on that front at UBCM, and I have been working very closely with staff on working with TELUS, and a lot of those poles are jointly owned or singularly owned by TELUS, and we have been working with them to try and streamline the way of getting those poles moved and relocated. Awesome, thank you. And then the last question, and you brought up the substations, which is great. Wondering if, and we've sort of been in the process of a new planning process for the 200 Street corridor, which will obviously encapsulate most of the area that this new capital infrastructure will service. And with the type of neighborhood and community that could potentially be built there, think more along the lines of, urban as opposed to suburban. And so I'm wondering if there is the opportunity to try and potentially avoid the type of substation that is acres upon acres of above ground. And if we can think of more of the substation like we see, Burrard Street in areas like that, so that we're having a bit more of a compact urban feel to it, if that's the plan that we're actually going to implement. I'm wondering if there's a possibility of that. We'll certainly work with you on the planning of the substations. I think it's fair to say that there's safety is our primary motivator and the workers who go into those substations have to be safe. And that means that we have to keep enough distance between the assets so that there's like limits of approach for how close our workers can get to the assets, and that's going to be the primary driver for the space. Second driver is what we actually need to have there to serve the customers. And then the third aspect will be how can we do this quick and how can we do it in a way that's affordable. So some of the ideas that you put forward can be more costly, and then we can talk about whether that is something the city is willing to contribute to in terms of the change of the outlook of the substation to meet the community needs. Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, thanks for coming and sharing all the great things that we're going to be seeing in the future. My question is actually about Site C and the capacity. we were hearing a lot about, rainfalls and, lack of snow cap and that. How does that affect the capacity at Site C?
So we will have absolutely no problem filling Site C this year. I think you raise an important issue that we all have to be very sensitive to in BC around drought and about water management. And what we know is that there are some normal changes in hydrology that happen year over year. And what we have is we're very fortunate to be able to leverage the storage hydro that we have in the province, to leverage that with imports when we need to, and to be able to export when we can as well. As you know, we helped out our neighboring provinces in the United States during that cold snap. And that's one of the benefits of having a storage hydro system. But I will tell you that we continue to monitor the hydrology in the province to make sure that we have that ability to provide reliable power, not just now, but 100 years from now.
Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, yeah, thank you for coming. Certainly, it isn't a day goes by where BC Hydro is not in the news for something. And we had at Metro, we had a delegation from CEO of Hydro, Chris O'Reilly. And there's a lot of questions asked. And the elephant in the room is where is the hydro coming from? And which you've all explained. And most of the people already know that 1 gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts. Most people know that. And most people know the hydro lines and the capacity of, but it keeps coming up in the news that we're importing power rather than exporting. I think we used to export power. And the next question is, what about, the question of the renewable natural gas to power your, add to the grid, if I may, through the chair?
Well, I can start by saying that BC Hydro must plan to be energy self-sufficient. That's a requirement. That's what the BC Utilities Commission, who's our regulator, insists that we do. And I'm very proud to say that the BC Utilities Commission did approve our long-term plan last week after several years of review. And there are years when we have more water and there's years that we have less water. On average, BC Hydro does export. And in any given year, even in years that are very wet, we both import and export at the same time. And one of the benefits, again, of storage hydro is when the sun is shining in California, we're importing. And that makes sense because California is producing more solar energy than they can use in California or in Nevada. We store all of that energy in BC Hydro's reservoirs, and at night when the sun doesn't shine and when the wind doesn't blow, we're exporting that power. So on any given day, we're both an importer and an exporter. But on the whole, we must be self-sufficient. I think your second question was about LNG, and I'll let Diana take that one.
Yeah, and was it RNG or LNG?
I think both. Since I got you, I'll get both. You give me the Coles note on both.
Okay, well, maybe we'll start with RNG because that's a good plug for our partner utility in the province, being Fortis. So Fortis is before the commission right now. They have their own considerations about how they're looking at decarbonization of their system over the long haul, and RNG figures prominently in their plan. The other thing that's sitting in Fortis's plan is a real commitment, similar to BC Hydro's, of really stepping into that conservation and energy efficiency space when it comes to how we use gas. So I think, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we do believe there is a role for our utilities like Fortis to play in the energy future. They have a mandate just as much as we do. They play a critical role in the province just as much as we do. And we are encouraging of their decarbonization efforts and partnering with them where it makes sense as well in terms of making sure consumers are informed about choices. Now for the less straightforward one, known as LNG. So I think, as we all know, in British Columbia, over a number of years, there has been an ongoing and continuing dialogue around the potential for LNG and what that means. There are a number of different opinions, perspectives, and thoughts, whether it's from an economic perspective, an environmental perspective, or a social perspective. One of the interesting things, however, about BC Hydro is we are truly set up to serve our customers. So the way our interconnection processes work, we are agnostic to the business of our customer. They come into our queue. We're obligated to study them, to think about the power implications for those industries, and then to serve them according to their position in the queue. So we often get questions about a number of our different customers or a number of the different industries that we serve and we support. And we really are quite respectful of our queue process and don't typically go beyond that for us.
Okay, my last question, if I may, is really a simple question. You've got a request for proposals for so many gigawatts. That seems to me like a very ambitious program. Have you got any kind of hints on where some of that might come from?
The short answer is we have some hints. We asked for the proponents to give us an indication of where they would be locating. We had a significant number of proponents, and they are located all across the province. Obviously, for us, the most significant demand for electricity is right here in the Lower Mainland, and that's going to be a really nice thing if we could get some proponents here. But we also know from our own research that the single best place for wind is in the Northeast. And so the good news is we have transmission lines in the Northeast, and we can bring that power into the Lower Mainland if we need to.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, you hear on the news that we imported 20% this year. Is that normal, or is that just a fluctuation because of the droughts and that kind of stuff?
That's entirely related to the drought. It's not a normal circumstance, and let's all be happy that we've got some rain, and we'll continue to watch the drought that's happening.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because as you bring this stuff online and you build out, I'm just looking, is there going to be a lag in the ability to meet the demand now until you reach what you want to achieve with this 36 billion?
Yes, just to clarify, the 36 billion is really about moving the energy around once we have it. The call for power in Site C is not part of that $36 billion. Right now, we believe we have enough energy and capacity to meet our customers' needs. And that is assuming that we get some of these new calls, the new sources of energy online as early as 2028. But as Diane is showing here, we have a lot of uncertainties in the future. And so if things change and we see massive increases in demand, we'll be working to find ways to do that. And this is why I'm signaling it's probably not the only call for power you're going to see from BC Hydro. This will just be the first.
Now, I get a little concerned when some other jurisdictions are trying to say they want to get rid of LNG. And the reason I do that is because I live in the south end of town here, where it is not infrequent that we lose our power. And a lot of us, the newer people, have the plumbed-in LNG generators. I've got one of those dirty old filthy diesel generators that I rely on and will not ever let go of. I'm really glad to see that you're still participating with LNG, because a lot of times out here, especially in the south end, we rely on our own generation to make sure that we don't go without power for extended periods of time.
Can I just add that part of that $36 billion is going to improve reliability, so that we will not just be building the shiny new things. $21 billion of that $36 billion goes to maintaining the assets we have and improving. In addition to that, we have a very extensive maintenance program, which is about $400 million a year that we spend to maintain the assets, which will also help with your reliability.
Between car collisions and trees.
Oh, those cars, yeah, okay. Trees is something that we're working on, though. We're trying to cut down some trees. So if there's anything you could do to help us by not, telling us not to cut down trees, that would be great.
That's a sensitive one around
It is,
here.
isn't
Okay.
it?
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question. I'm going to get to high-level comment in a second, but how much of that is for potential for undergrounding some of these overhead wires, which would negate the need to chop down those trees?
Well, it doesn't negate the need, because we do have to build trenches and we do still have to cut down trees. What I mentioned is we need to move fast to be able to meet customers' needs, and we have to do this affordably. I can tell you that undergrounding is significantly more expensive and takes significantly more time, requires more permitting. And so if you want us to move fast, we ask you to please let us do the overhead.
Okay, well, that's a good point, because I think some of us who live in the rural areas, like Councillor Bailey, perceive the lack of reliability to come from the vulnerability of the infrastructure due to the fact that it's overhead. So would it not make sense to find the right balance between speed, cost, and reliability? Do the overhead wiring actually reduce reliability in the areas like ours?
We have looked at the cost benefit of going underground from a reliability perspective. One of the nice things about overhead is when something breaks, and you know exactly where it broke. And you can send a crew out there and they can fix it really quickly. When something breaks and it's underground, that becomes an entirely different thing. We now have to get a permit to close a road. We now have to do a whole bunch more digging and excavating to be able to find that. So in fact, we find that from a reliability perspective, overhead is better.
Right. Well, I do recall our conversations at UBCM, right? So I appreciate, and I raised at the time, lack of power capacity and what is the long-term plan for Willoughby. And here we are. We now have that plan. So I want to thank you for that. And I believe there was a number of people advocating for their communities in regards to power. And I think, it's great to see this government and our local MLAs taking action to solve this problem, because it clearly is a problem, and making the investments to address it. Because we've heard from those that are trying to produce housing that the Premier is looking for have been held up without knowing what the plan is. So I think knowing what the plan is, knowing that you have one, and knowing that you're working on one with a timeline is great to see, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion here, no other questions, so move on to delegations 3 and 4 from Lionel Anker and Andrew Gauntly. Do you wish to delegate together or separately? Separately? Great, so that would be C3. Lionel Anker, please come forward. Great, so maybe introduce yourselves so we know who is who, and please go ahead.
I'm Lionel Anker.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Woodward and councillors. My name is Lionel Anker, and I have lived in Walnut Grove for 28 years. I was formerly president of the Langley Community Tennis Association, a lease vehicle that assisted the township with the operation of the indoor courts previously built at the event center. I am one of several tennis players who has already written to the township about the theme on this introductory slide. Your worship, I do have a request at the very beginning. Our presentation builds on itself through both our delegates. We believe that it will flow better if the second delegate follows directly after me. This will be more efficient and easier for you and council to understand exactly what we are saying and why. We also think it will eliminate questions that you may have after my talk, which will be answered in the second segment. And hopefully that will help us stay on time.
Okay, great, thank you. So we'll do exactly that. We'll let you complete both of your submissions, and then we'll take questions if there are any.
First, we acknowledge, appreciate, and agree with the motion introduced by Councillor Bailey on January 29th to staff, and we trust that our presentation today will be helpful as you proceed further in your deliberations. Goals to compare 4 major points presented by pickleball to council with the position of tennis. Review the reaction of tennis players to the pickleball request to council on January the 29th. Review major playing differences between tennis and pickleball. Present our recommended way forward. What?
Could we go back one slide, please?
It's you controlling the slides, so but Ms. Bauer can assist you.
If you just use the other buttons.
On the other side?
And go previous. Down, slide down, click on previous. You go, and on that menu, you see that? Just go to hit previous. Up a little bit, there you go. Okay, and you can just move back.
You can also use the arrow buttons.
Okay. This is a slide made necessary because we disagree strongly with some of the things said to you on January the 29th. By number of players, tennis has grown as much as pickleball and is far from being a dead sport. A wet ball is not what keeps us from playing on a wet tennis court. It is out of respect for our opponents because it's a safety issue. We also book indoor courts at a reasonable cost so we can play just as often in winter as we do in summer. Converting tennis courts is not the answer. There are 12 other pickleball courts as well as 8 courts in the city of Langley that they use, and 12 of our courts that have been painted with pickleball lines, which was not in their presentation. Finally, I don't think they really understand that we are wanting to help them. Wholehearted understanding of all the appeal to pickleball and its success in attracting players. Several tennis players are now playing pickleball as well, but tennis is their passion. Immediate empathy to the frustration of pickleball players to the lack of sufficient pickleball courts to satisfy their desire to play. Resounding support for the pickleball request for more courts. However, disappointment that pickleball had not talked to us and solicited our help. Extremely upset that pickleball had heavily oriented their presentation to conversion of tennis courts. And I quote, "Convert one tennis court. If it is the right dimensions, it's possible to get 4 pickleball courts," unquote, rather than asking for new construction of pickleball courts. We heard no reference to 12 tennis courts painted with pickleball lines or 12 other full pickleball courts available to them. Pickleball did not even quantify the number of courts they needed. Serious concern that council might merely convert or paint more tennis courts, which would further reduce and constrict playing time for tennis. Our playing equipment is similar and basically costs the same, but the nets are different heights and the court markings are radically different. The problem for both sports is the visibility and overlapping of the lines. The top court has a blue oval drawn around pickleball. Note that when they play, they have no new lines to contend with, but a problem at the back line calling a shot in or out due to the separation of the lines. The lower court has a black square around tennis, so imagine yourself on our court with all the new lines we have in front of us when we play. The same line separation is a bigger issue for us that comes into play on every serve, and it is hard to see. The way forward. The existing tennis courts in the Township of Langley are legacy facilities that were built at various times based on the demand for tennis. Tennis itself is a growing sport and cannot afford to lose any courts at this time. In fact, there may come a time in the next 3 to 5 years when tennis may also be requesting more courts from the township. By restricting existing tennis courts to tennis and constructing new regulation pickleball courts, the township can provide balanced access for both sports. Tennis court conversions and line painting do not. Tennis applauds the concept of making Langley the pickleball capital of Canada and holding tournaments that would bring economic value to the township as well as prestige. Tennis supports pickleball, but only through new construction of courts, and we are asking for pickleball lines painted on tennis courts to be removed. This is a sign we want pickleball to succeed. but not at the expense of tennis. Thank you for your time and attention.
Great, thank you. So, Mr. Gauntly, do you want to add to that, and then
I will continue.
and then we'll take questions. So
Yeah.
it's been 7-8 minutes already, so we could ask if you could try to get to the bottom line as quickly as you can. Thanks.
I was also with the Langley Community Tennis Association. I've been playing tennis in the township mostly 6 hours every week for the past 16 years. My goals today are as follows: to review the current state of tennis in Canada, to compare tennis and pickleball, to talk about a little bit about the additional health benefits of tennis, actually to go into the Bible, Joel chapter 2, where it talks about old men dreaming dreams and young men seeing visions, and offer some recommendations. Tennis Canada conducted a survey that showed that nearly 5 million Canadians had played tennis in 2023. Also, that tennis was the 4th most popular sport in terms of interest and 5th by participation. Let's talk about some numbers that are properly sourced. Firstly, in the USA, between 2018 and 2022, pickleball grew by 171%, but tennis still had slightly higher growth in new players. These figures show the number of people trying to network to play more games with players of the same capability. It's a bit like a dating site. These are for players who want to play in Langley, and you will note that there are many more tennis players than pickleball, further proof that tennis has many more players. I have to be honest, though, and say that the low pickleball numbers may be somewhat reflective of court availability. According to both official associations in 2023, tennis had 3.6 times as many players as pickleball in Canada. After all, tennis has been around since the year 1583. Sadly, I have yet to prove that my 11th great-grandfather, John Gauntly, played at that time. The one number I would really like to show you is the number of young people actively taking lessons for both sports, because it is an indicator of the longer-term future of the sports. Alas, I could not find it. I understand the pickleball delegation to say they needed more facilities to train their players. One just has to go to the tennis center Langley to see many kids from the ages of 8 to 18 and younger constantly taking lessons, as well as adults. Another interesting fact, as you may know, there is only one specialty racket shop in the area, not in the township, but in Cloverdale. The owner told me that pickleball represents less than 10% of his business. This is my tennis is really good for you slide. The health benefits of tennis will remind you of some of the benefits of pickleball. But tennis is the one that has the 56% cardiovascular reduction, mainly because pickleball is a less strenuous game with less running than tennis, as you would expect from a much smaller court. But I love the fact that pickleball is appealing to so many people, including township councilors who see it as a good activity to try. Just a friendly hint, try tennis too. Now to the issue of dreams and visions. As we brainstormed this, we were missing some key information, notably what land the township had. We also did not know the number of new pickleball courts they wanted because they did not say specifically. We did not know if they had tried to rent unused retail space like the former Nordstrom or Bed Bath & Beyond. Both those retail outlets have been leased, but the baby store next to Bed Bath & Beyond is not leased, and it has 21,000 square feet, room for 12 to 15 pickleball courts, depending on where support pillars might be. Do they want clusters of courts, or do they really want a larger facility of 12 or more? But our vision for pickleball is to fill a niche that they obviously feel they deserve in the community and succeed. Build it and pickleball players will come, we were told. Our vision is that they have their 24-court facility for regular play and for tournaments. We agree it should be at the event center, where there's ample parking and washroom facilities, and if there's no available land, we recommend the township review building it up 12 to 15 feet on top of the large northwest parking lot. You could probably build also 18 courts on top of the parking lot to the east of the existing field house, and perhaps 6 others just to the north. But so many courts so close together will magnify the sound problem, so we suggest that you add a proviso that when quieter balls and paddles are created, they must be used. You could also investigate the cost and effectiveness of sound buffer fencing offered by 3 or 4 manufacturers. Down the road, when pickleball has consolidated its growth and proved its economic viability to the point that a wise businessman would build an indoor facility, that would really feel what we think they also need. I'm told by the owner of the tennis center Langley that date is several years away. However, there's a 12-court pickleball facility in Vernon, which is covered and enclosed thanks in part to volunteer labor and pickleball players who funded most of the cost through debentures and prepaying their court fees. Look for the video online. Someone had a vision. This is our vision. What is the township's? This next slide is my thing of beauty, the same term that Lionel uses to describe one of his winning tennis shots. This is what we wish pickleball had shown you. It is a 21-court facility in Red Deer, and they have 7 additional courts and a shopping mall for play in summer and winter. Next, here is a refresher about our 6 indoor tennis courts. If it can make it financially, surely 24 pickleball courts could, if pickleballers agreed to use them. You recall them talking about pickleball training and lessons, and this is where that vitally important function for player performance as well as winter play on dry courts can occur. So now to our recommendations. Strike a balance between accommodating the growing popularity of pickleball and preserving the availability of tennis courts to ensure that both sports can thrive. Both tennis and pickleball are growing, and in particular, the township should focus and support on new construction pickleball courts in the short term. You all know about the rob Peter to pay Paul principle. Reject pickleball Paul's request to convert more of Tennis Peter's courts, as Tennis Peter has nothing more to give. Conversion will not satisfy their past or future growth or stated desire to host tournaments and bring economic benefits to the township. Council should prioritize a major outdoor facility like Red Deer as soon as possible and determine if there is an appetite for an indoor facility like the Tennis Center Langley in 3 to 4 years. Council should shelve conversion of tennis courts or painting of pickleball lines on tennis courts indefinitely. After the township has built 10 new pickleball courts, it will remove the lines already painted on existing tennis courts. We have gathered a petition with over 400 names, and I will be delivering that to council next week. And lastly, deliver on Mayor Woodward's comment in November 2023 that this council has been very, very clear and very, very dedicated to catching up with infrastructure, and that includes preparing for our recreation needs of the future. My last slide is the picture of a tennis tournament that we had several years ago for one day. These courts are at Trinity Western University, and sadly were converted to an academic building and parking. So there are many university students looking for tennis as well. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
So I really appreciate you coming here today and submitting a very in-depth and thoughtful delegation submission. I just want to confirm that almost immediately after the pickleball delegations, which we listened to and take seriously, that I agreed with the submission and the basic premise of not to have one user group pitted against another, and that to always ensure that we're adding to recreation capacity, not looking to convert and remove recreation capacity. So that's certainly my position, and from what I've heard, that's a strong position on many members of council. So I want to rest assured that, that there's no path heading down to conversion that has been endorsed by council. It's simply the issue of pickleball capacity is being reviewed, and I'll have some more comments as we go through council. But again, I want to appreciate both of you coming here today, and I think it's appropriate, it's timely, and appreciated by myself very much. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Drew and Lionel, for coming today. That's the best picture of me leaning beside a question mark I've ever seen. I did want to tell you the first thing is I really, really, really want to learn how to play pickleball. I do. I really want to learn that. The one main reason is my brother's learning it, and I want to beat him. Now, I've said that. I was a tennis coach. I coached tennis for young people. They beat me all the time. And I'm looking at this gentleman, it's actually a teenager over here in the audience. Is that a Rod Laver rocket? I used to have one of those. Okay, I used to have one of those. And now, the one I have now, it looks about the size of this, about this size. That's my racket today. I don't know if you guys know much about tennis, but I used to throw that ball up as high as that, so it even hit the atmosphere, had it so high. And then I used to wait, and then I used to run. I used to wait for the ball to come down, and then I would hit the ball dead on.
Is there
I'd
a question in there somewhere?
You have to hear this, Mr. Mayor. Anyway, and then the ball came spinning around, right? And then a double fault every time, of course. But anyway, you know, the thing is, you guys have to work together with whoever group it is. And you know, as the mayor said, we provide recreation, and that means you have to sit down with those guys, pickleball guys. And of course, I also told them they should design a ball that could be quieter, and that's up to them. I think it's an excellent presentation. Tennis is a great sport. I remember a little bit of history when you guys not you guys, maybe you're way too young for that, put up that bubble up there by the event center. It wasn't an event center then, and there was I think there's a guy by the name of Dixon or something, and that lady, she's from Europe. I'm not sure what was her name again? Marianne, okay. And then that's gone now. And then Larry came, he put that new, I don't know if you know about the people in the audience don't know about the tennis facility. Okay, so I was wondering, do you have the numbers on how many people are using that facility now? I don't know if Larry's here. That's my first question. Now, how many people are using that facility now, Larry's facility?
I don't have those numbers. Whether Larry would share them with you would be up to him. But just going by when we can go onto their online site and try and book a facility, we know it's virtually fully booked all the time, especially in the wintertime. So I believe, based on the research that I did, it's about 99% looked after during the winter. I don't have the numbers for the summer, unfortunately.
Okay, well, anyway, thank you very much for coming today. We really appreciate it. We've got to work out the two groups to work together, but tennis, I still got a love in my heart for it. I beat my brother all the time. That's not a problem. But anyway, keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, thanks a lot for this. I've been waiting for it for a while. As you know, I poked you guys a couple of times with some pictures and hoping that we would get the other side of the argument. This is exactly what I've been waiting for, stats and things. And I got to ask you a question. I think it's contained in here. You haven't been talking to the pickleball people, have you?
Yes, we have.
Oh, excellent. Because that's what I was going to say. I really hope you guys can get together and maybe work out some arrangement that you could agree and bring forward to us. That would be really helpful. I do not play tennis and I do not play pickleball. I've got lacrosse knees, and I would be screaming in agony if I played either one in minutes. So thank you very much. This is exactly what I've been waiting for and hoping to see. And I love your approach of not attacking the pickleball guys. Thanks.
Just a comment. I did talk to Mr. Mercer, and he made it clear to me that he started the ball rolling, and that was it. There was no further involvement from him.
Councillor Richter?
Yes, I appreciate your time coming out today, too. I liked your slide, the by the numbers slide, and I just had a couple of questions on that. It says you've got 417 Langley residents in tennis, and there's 1,183 registered. So is that the whole size of the tennis association? No?
Oh, no, this is just for people who want to play tennis. We have various groups of tennis players in Langley. There's 2 or 3 of them represented here today. And there are a lot of other players who play independently. They don't have the opportunity to play with a regular group. Okay. So they register on this site. And so what we're saying is there's a lot of people registered, and there's 400 of them live in Langley already. And I was trying to show that with the numbers for pickleball, they have also got their own site, which is very similar, but they don't have as many people in Langley that want to play. And maybe that's because they don't have courts.
Yeah, because it says here that there's only 216 registered, of which 54 are Langley residents. Yeah. Those are interesting numbers. One of your other slides mentioned the indoor field, the Langley, the tennis center Langley, that's 99% booked in winter months. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it make more sense to have indoor facilities for tennis than outdoor facilities?
Well, it's something that you need in the wintertime. And we also have what we call block booking. So we book, like for ourselves, we're called the Racketeers. We have about 20 to 25 players. And we book from the middle of October to the middle of April.
Okay.
All winter. We play every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Friday from 8 o'clock till 10. And that's block booking. So those are booked for us all winter. And then, of course, in the summertime when we go outside, then we have to line up to play whichever court we want to go to.
Okay, so I guess the question I'm trying to get at is it basically like 50% of use indoor versus 50% outdoor, or is it more like 80% indoor, 20% outdoor?
I'm not sure what it would be. We play outdoors in the wintertime too, but again, that's a weather thing, right,
Yeah,
for us.
yeah.
The courts have to be dry,
Yeah.
and we like sunshine, but we do play outside in the wintertime as well.
But you don't play when it's raining outside, right? No.
I don't think anybody plays outside when it's raining.
Including the pickleball people?
Exactly.
Okay. And you mentioned that there were 12 converted courts, so those are 12 tennis courts that were converted to pickleball?
Yes,
Okay, and you want these to be deconverted, right?
that's what we would like.
Okay.
Well, let me just clarify. That number really was the number of courts that have pickleball lines painted on them.
Yeah, not converted, but just
Those
lines.
In the township of Langley, as far as we know, there's only one tennis court that's been converted. That's the one at West Langley Park, which they
Okay.
talked about quite extensively. But
Okay.
there's only one so far.
So there's only the one in the township? Okay, there's not the 12.
Yeah, that was strictly a tennis court, but now it's strictly pickleball.
Strictly, okay. I can see how the two sets of lines would be confusing for both groups.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much for your time
Thank you.
today.
Thank you. No other questions from council. And again, I really appreciate you bringing this forward, and it's something we're definitely working on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. So going to ask Delegation C5 from Caleb Fantillo and Chris Pack, please. Please come forward.
Hello.
Great. Go ahead. Thank you. Just identify yourselves for members of council that don't know, and thanks again for coming here today.
Thank you for having us. My name is Caleb Fantillo.
I'm Chris Pack from Thunderbird.
Mayor Woodward and honorable members of council, my name is Caleb Fantillo, and I'm here today with Chris Pack to speak to you about support for a proposal that we believe has the potential to enhance the holiday experience for the Township of Langley residents and visitors. Specifically, we are requesting the deferral of portion of agenda item E4, which pertains to the allocation of funds for electrical improvements and additional light displays at Derrick Doubleday for the Holiday Lights Walk. We understand and appreciate the efforts of the township to bring festive experiences to our community, and we would like to propose an alternative approach that we believe will offer a more expansive and engaging holiday event for residents of all ages. Our proposal is to host a large-scale interactive holiday light display at Thunderbird Show Park. This event would run from late November through early January and would be including the following components: light displays and decorations, implement a comprehensive and vibrant array of interactive light displays throughout the Thunderbird Show Park to create a visually and stunning holiday atmosphere, a vendor market. This would include hosting a vendor market, providing local businesses and artisans an opportunity to showcase their products and services, contributing to the local economy. Entertainment. Arrange for entertainment options, including live music, performances, and festive activities to engage and delight attendees. Tractor rides and activities for kids. Offer tractor pull rides through the site, as well as a variety of activities for children, such as agri-education, activations, potentially including 4-H, ensuring a family-friendly experience. Discounts for Township of Langley residents. Extend discounts to Township of Langley residents to encourage local participation and appreciation. Charitable contributions. Commit to making charitable contributions with proceeds benefiting a nonprofit organization agreed upon by all parties, fostering community support and collaboration. We believe Thunderbird Show Park is an ideal location for this large-scale event due to its existing power and facility infrastructure, vast parking availability, and accessibility. In contrast, Derrick Doubleday presents significant challenges, including limited parking, lack of power infrastructure, and safety concerns associated with patrons walking in the dark from remote parking locations. We are eager to partner with the township on this initiative for a one-year trial. This partnership would provide an opportunity to showcase the collaborative efforts of the township and the private sector in creating a memorable and safe holiday experience for our community. We kindly request that council considers deferring funding the Derrick Doubleday event and engages in discussions with us regarding the proposed holiday event at Thunderbird Show Park. We believe this alternative approach aligns with the township's commitment to providing exceptional experiences for its residents and visitors. Thank you for your time and consideration. We look forward to the opportunity to discuss this proposal further and explore the potential of this exciting holiday event for the Township of Langley.
Great. Anything?
Thanks. Thank you very much for your time. I think the short long of it is that there's a few holiday experiences, and my kids are 6 and 8, so we visit them all. And I think we could do a little bit better job and bring them all together. I think T-Bird has a lot of infrastructure during the summer, obviously, and during the winter, there's not a lot happening. So we can use the indoor arenas. So if we have a wet winter, then we can have things inside. We have the power and we have the parking. So we're not bugging people when we go to Williams Park and the road's backed up. And we want to be able to use T-Bird. So just that the more people we have in the park, the more often they're going to come back in the summer. So it's just a nice use for it. And we really think that there's an agricultural angle that isn't being used right now. So sometimes it's tricky to use public funds with private. And so it's more that we just wanted to put the bug in your ear just to see if it's something that you would consider. So
Great.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks. I have some questions from council. Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And I'm actually a little bit offside. Do you guys have any land for pickleball?
I want it now. Yeah, actually, we have the old tennis building. So
Whoa,
yeah.
there you go. So maybe we
So
can
here,
talk
shoot,
about
yeah.
that on another. Okay, so I'm grateful you brought up the whole public-private, the monies and all that kind of stuff, because we do have private companies doing their own Christmas shows like Martinis and I think the Glow. And they all charge about $20, I think. So is this, I know we haven't had any formal discussions, but are you thinking about charging people? And is there going to be investment from Thunderbird as well as, so what would be the investment on the part of Thunderbird?
The initial investment would be in buying the lights and obviously all the staff, and then bringing in a lot of the 4-H aspects of it because we don't have that on site. But so there would be a charge, and I guess it would just be a combo whatever that amount, we would offset that with a coupon for township residents.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So are you thinking like a per person sort of like, it would still be a charge, right? of
There would
some
still be a
kind?
charge,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks.
So that would be the difference. I think your program or it would be free, is that correct?
No, I was just wondering how that would get. So
Oh,
I
okay.
know that we do have Christmas in Williams Park, which is free. So I'm just trying to weigh all the possibilities and all the different things that are around the table right now. So
Totally.
yeah, thanks for coming and sharing us with us.
Councillor Richter.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, actually, and you're right, the location has a lot of possible advantages to it, for sure. How long do you see it running?
So we were thinking about 5 weeks, starting at the end of November and kind of seeing how it went to the 1st of January. I
Okay.
think people kind of get over Christmas at that point, so.
And I know Councillor Kuntz just asked about a fee, so what fee are you thinking of?
That's a good question. I guess that would all depend on what we could offset by investment from township or how big of a scale we're going to build the first year. We want this to be kind of a 3-year plan on our side of things. Not sure if that would coincide with what the township wants, but We were gonna look at just other models, just see what Martini Town was doing and seeing what we could do. We want to be more competitive than those, and I think, like Mike took my kids there, there's no engagement at that one. It's very Instagrammable and it's really cool. But then there's also drive-through ones where your kids are still in your car, which is not ideal. So you want to get out and you want to get them busy and doing things, and then we thought that we could bring the animals on and the tractors, and so I think it's something that they'll want to return to. It won't be a one-time wonder.
Okay.
So we want to make it low enough that it's easy for them to want to come back.
So the lights, the light displays, would people be walking through that or driving through it?
Correct, they'd be walking through that.
They'd be
Yeah,
walking
so it'd be
through
kind of like how Glow is styled.
Yeah.
Big displays, Instagrammable displays, and walk-through displays. So I know Derek Doubleday is just mini lights and lights on the trees. This would be a combination of both.
Okay. And now, one of the concerns I would have is we don't provide a subsidy to either Martini Town or to Glow. So I'm wondering how we could justify a subsidy to a private organization.
I think probably bringing in a charitable aspect, and then we could kind of figure out how that would work.
Okay. And could the charitable aspect be a charity or charities in Langley?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And the lights expenditure, how much would have to be, you said you've got a 3-year plan, but I know that Christmas in Williams Park have got like thousands of dollars invested in lights. How much of an investment are you thinking of in lights?
You want to explain your lights?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Decrolight Industries. We deal with the Township of Langley a lot for a lot of the township's lights. And we provide Martini, we provide Christmas in Williams Park with all their lighting. I shouldn't say all, but majority of their lighting. So that would probably be financed through us personally over a 3-year term. So we would be putting that money out of our own company first, and then financing that through the event for 3 years.
Okay, that's interesting. And I really like the idea of a Christmas market. I think that's long overdue in the township. I would want to be very sure, though, that it would be inclusive of as many Langley-based vendors as possible. We have some events right now that kind of are very selective in who they allow to participate in those events, and I don't think it's fair to all the small businesses in the community that want to participate in an event like that. So how are you going to run this vendor thing?
Well, thankfully we have 3 indoors that are right next to each other, so we could flow into all 3 if there's that much demand. Some of the entertainment, just so that you know that it's not weather dependent, we're going to be in there. But we have the capacity to scale up or keep it, small the first year and keep growing.
Okay.
So I don't think we would turn anyone away.
You wouldn't turn anyone away?
I mean, our plan would be to make it as big so that you need to come back another time, and so you don't hit everything or type of thing that you want to come back. We always think that if you have 10 vendors, it doesn't take very long to see, and those 10 vendors have a hard time bringing in new things year over year. So we try to have a little bit of variety.
Okay. Well, I hope you will stick to that because it's very inclusive if you do.
Is this recorded?
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, thanks for being here today. Langley is one of the few municipalities that doesn't have any city or township sanctioned Christmas events. So it is an event that we own, that we operate. I believe there's parks with Surrey, Burnaby, and we're one of the few municipalities that hasn't done that so far. We've gone through Christmas in Williams Parks is technically done through another society. It's not a township-owned item. As you're aware, we invest a lot of money in kind to the Society for Williams Park. And I raised a concern in the fall in the sense that they solicit for donations, which I have a hard time with, even with donations, asking our residents to contribute to an event that we subsidize with a large value of money. Likewise, I was like totally on board until I heard fees. And I think it's important that we have an inclusive event within Langley that is free for our residents. And so I would loved everything until I heard the fee portion, because we're not offering something, if you're asking for a significant investment outside of what we would do through the grant program, I would personally struggle with that, because I don't want to see any family turned away for any reasons, because we don't have that currently. I want to see a completely free event, you know, make a donation for charity purposes, no problems with that, but just a donation to operate an event I do have an issue with. And likewise, I would be really challenged to not struggle with doing another Christmas event and subsidizing it, but also then charging a fee for it. So if you can get around the fee component,
You're in.
I'm in. But right now, like, I don't know if you want to have maybe sections of it, like where it's rides,
And
you know.
you could have the first part be the free part.
Yeah.
And then you could pay to play.
If
It could be
we
kinda a la
could
carte
figure
if you wanted
that,
to.
yeah, a la carte it
I mean,
maybe.
That could be discussion,
Yeah,
for sure.
okay. That's where my heart is that I want to see something completely free, non-obligatory for people to be able to go into, especially at Christmas. It's a difficult time for people, especially, you know, single moms, people who are disadvantaged, and I don't want them to have a barrier of a township event not being able to go to it because of finances. So that's just where my heart is at right now. Thanks.
Councillor Bailey?
Might be able to help you guys out here with an example. I was on the BC Professional Firefighters Burn Fund for a number of years, and I was the supervisor of the original lights. That's Bright Nights at Stanley Park. You want to go and talk to those guys, because it is by donation. And when I hear that these events are free, they're not free. They're by donation, all of them. And that's how the Burn Fund operates Bright Nights. That's how Williams Park operates. And that's how all of them do. So where they do charge is for the train, which might fit in exactly with what you guys are talking about. Go talk to the Burn Fund. They'll save you an awful lot of time. Your time frame is exactly the same as Bright Nights. Okay, and then, you know, we're not talking, Bright Nights is different than Van Dusen and all the other ones that have come on board. They're the original. In fact, before Bright Nights was in Cloverdale, it was in Newton, Candy Cane Lane. So go and talk to the Burn Fund. They'll be able to help you a ton with a lot of these. The only one they don't do is the market, which I think is a brilliant idea. So I'd be fully supportive of this. I can tell you right now, $100,000 at Derek Doubleday will fail. There's 2 million lights at Bright Nights. And you're not going to do that for $100,000 plus sinking about $60,000 into the ground just to get the power there. I love this idea, and I like how you're approaching it. So go talk to the Burn Fund, okay?
Will do. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Bishop. And I'd probably echo a lot of the same kind of comments. My one sort of moment of pause, and I'm sure that there's township staff who can attest to this, with regards to discount for township residents as opposed to not. I think it's a challenge to be realistically saying that everybody will be able to be honest, or that we'll be able to verify that concretely enough to justify, to me, making a substantial investment in this kind of project as a municipality. I think the challenge for me is, as a private organization, I think this is fantastic if it's a profit-seeking enterprise that we can help with by making, you know, accommodations on certain things like traffic, like whatever that has to happen, and it's not out of the ordinary of what we would do for any other organization. So I think if it's that, fantastic, or if it's a completely free event with certain aspects of different tiers that will go to charity, then that's a different story. So the hybrid, I'm not necessarily able to wrap my head around fully how, if I could get behind it and putting in actual public dollars into it. But I think that it's definitely a conversation to keep having, and we've got plenty of time to get around some of these concerns. So I appreciate you guys coming forward this early.
Thanks. Thank you.
Councillor Martins?
Yeah. Hi, and thank you both for coming today. I love your vision. I love your ideas. I like when we are considering different ideas and different ways of doing things and trying something completely new. So I really appreciate the spirit of that. I love Christmas, and I'm pretty sure my family and I have been to every outdoor Christmas experience across the Lower Mainland over the course of my children's lives. And just food for thought, if I may, if you could consider accessibility component about that. I've been to Thunderbird. You do have an incredible facility there. I'm sure it wouldn't be too far of a stretch to include the accessibility option. When I was at Christmas in Williams Park this past year, I saw it in a different light, volunteering, and as the vehicles went by. There was a lot of like minibuses of seniors or people with special needs who have mobility issues that were able to come and drive through that and enjoy that and be able to see the lights, to get out and celebrate Christmas as best they can. So that to me would really knock things out of the park if you could add an element there, recognizing that portion of our community. Yeah, thank you again.
Good idea.
Councillor Bailey?
I can address that one for you guys. Every year you host the MS ride there, and they have very specialized mobility requirements, and I think it's 3 years you've had us there now, and there has never been one complaint from anyone in the MS Society about your accessibility. It's another thing I've seen you handle that event with ease. It's accessibility at Thunderbird is really high. Thanks.
Thank you. Our goal would be to be accessible to everybody, obviously.
Great. So I want to echo that too. I appreciate you bringing this for council to consider, especially given today's agenda. And I also agree with Councillor Bratt that there's plenty of time for council to look at some options here. So thank you very much again for presenting this today.
Appreciate it. Thank
you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Reports to council. Item E1, bylaw enforcement, public relations and outreach campaign. Somebody wish to move that? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yes, the $10,000 that's been set aside for this campaign, I note on page 3 there's a reference to paid post ads and boosts. Is that going to be included within the $10,000?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, yes, it's in the existing budget allocated for bylaw department.
Okay, so we won't be spending more than $10,000 on it?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, call the question on item E1. That carries unanimously. Item E2, Willoughby Development Phasing Policy. I'll move it. Is there a second? Or seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on E2? Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I've gotten some feedback. I don't know if other people on council have lately about concerns being raised on phasing. So I'm wondering if we should be getting some public input on this. Is public input on a policy possible? Maybe through you to Mr. Backen?
It's theoretically possible, Your Worship. It's not the norm, but it's up to council if they wish to have some sort of public event forum or open house or internet email question.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question on E2. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item E3, telecommunication tower application number 9. There's a council should consider recommendation. Does anybody wish to move A, to not object? Moved by Councillor Van Popta, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on A, to not object? Great, call the question on E, option A. That is 3. That carries unanimously. Item E4, 2024 enhanced special events, to consider some options for the budget and set aside for this. I'm going to try to get this along with maybe addressing some of the items which I think would have some less controversy surrounding them than maybe perhaps some others based on what I've heard. So if we break this out into paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on page 3, paragraph number 2, authorize the use of 30,000 operating funds from the community events for drone or light show at Township's Canada Day event. I'll come back to that one. Then 3 and 4, Item number 4 is authorizing 26,000 for operating funds for a variety of events. I will move that paragraph only. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. So I'm going to clear the queue. This is on paragraph 4, which is now on the floor. Is there any discussion on paragraph 4? Councillor Richter.
I've raised it before. I'm going to raise it again. I think the term pioneer is no longer an inclusive or welcoming label for a township event in a diverse community, particularly in a community that hosts, or not doesn't host, that is on the ancestral lands of 4 First Nations.
Mr. Beck.
I think we should change the name from Pioneer to Elder Luncheon or Langley History Luncheon, something that is more inclusive than the word pioneer.
No, Mr. Beck, I don't know if you have a comment, but I did ask the same question. This has been the second time this has been raised. I asked that question of one of the organizers who told me in no uncertain terms, no thank you. The words no thank you weren't used. So I just want to make it clear if you have any comments on that from a staff perspective on is it our event to rename? Because it was made very clear to me that it's not.
The event or the term has a long history from the township's celebrations, I guess, in modern day times, we'll say since the war. And as such, it's something that we too run into a lot of, I guess, consternation at the suggestion. I understand certainly the intention and what the implications are, but at this point, being it's effectively a third-party event, we defer to them for the name until there's some reason not to.
Yeah, so I think I'll leave that up to council. Any member of council wishes to make a motion to maybe amend this or a subsequent motion, but I did follow up on it, and Councilor Victor, I'm not finished yet. I did follow up on it, and I did get their opinion. Again, speaking to the primary organizer there, and I was told that they have no interest in that, but of course we could make it more formal to request that. Councilor Richter, go ahead.
Yes, I think we should make it more formal. These are public monies paid for by all taxpayers towards these events. The events need to be inclusive in recognition of the truth and reconciliation issues that have been in the forefront, as well as other inclusivity issues. So I would make that formal recommendation that the name be changed to Elder Luncheon.
Is there a seconder to that? Not seeing a seconder. Councilor Richter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The reason I didn't second that is because I don't necessarily support the words elder luncheon, but I do echo some of the comments of Councilor Richter that I think it's appropriate that we ask in a formal way that this society looks to pick a different name. So I would support a recommendation or a motion to request them to change the name from Pioneer Luncheon, but leave it open-ended.
If you wish to make that a motion, a subsequent motion, as opposed to tying it to this, it could be considered for them to consider.
I would like to make a subsequent motion for the next year.
Because we could also, another option for council to consider would be to get the specific amount within this 26 that is for the Pioneer Luncheon and separate that out so the others can proceed. That would be another option.
I'd like that option is probably the best.
So Mr. Backen, just for council to consider, do we know the amount of the 26 that was earmarked for the luncheon?
I think it was approximately 3,000, Your Worship.
Okay, so if any member of council wishes to advance removing that and reducing it to 23,000, we could deal with it separately.
I would so moved.
Is there a seconder to that? Not seeing a seconder to that,
Okay.
Councilor Pratt. Okay, so paragraph 4, unamended. Call the question on. Well, you got to be quicker than that. Councilor Martins, go ahead.
I was actually quicker, and it was cleared off when that last discussion happened. I had a question about this paragraph, in fact, for staff, if I may. I noticed in the staff report, items 1 and 3 refer to 1 and 3 being the volunteer appreciation and 3 being the luncheon we were just discussing. $3,000 for increased catering costs. So if a question to staff, if I may, what is the base budget then for those 2 events? And then with this amendment, the total?
Thank you for the question. We have the volunteer appreciation banquet, which has a base budget. So outside of this budget, we're just talking in this report about the enhanced budgets. So the base budget for that is $18,000. So the $3,000, as it's mentioned, is for the additional catering costs. The Pioneer Luncheon has a base budget of $20,500 and a $3,000 additional for the additional catering costs. So, yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that clarification. That's great information. Thank you.
Call a question on paragraph 4 and 4. That the one we were just debating, Councillor Richter. 1, 2, 3, 4. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. So, Councillor Pratt, we could revisit it at the end of disposing of all the others, but I'm trying to separate out Christmas from everything else. I think that's appropriate. But so if you have something, go ahead.
Yeah.
Related to that?
Trying to wordsmith it on the go, I apologize, but the motion would effectively be that the council requests the organizers of the Pioneer Luncheon to meet with staff and council and consider possible alternative naming conventions for future event.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Richter. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
No, I think the comments stand that if we can find a way to celebrate the township's history in a positive way, it's as inclusive as possible. I think that's fantastic. But we need to recognize that we potentially need to rename the event.
All right. Is there any other discussion on that? Councillor Van Popte, go ahead.
Sorry, just to clarify, is this a township event or is this us providing money to a third party for an event?
It's the latter.
This is a township event that we work with the organizers that are established to run the event. Yeah.
Okay.
We should just be cautious. Mr. Stair is correct. However, I would call it almost a venture or partnership because there's two parties coming together. So there is some pride and ownership taken by the committee themselves. They have our heavy support, but it is something that is noted that they take the lead on.
Okay, so not unlike the partnership we have with the Society of Williams Park Christmas event. Okay, if that's the case, then I don't feel comfortable telling other people how to name their society. If that's how they identify, and they've been given that advice that or that comment already, and they've already taken that perspective. Then at this point, I feel like they've already addressed it.
Yeah, and that was somebody that I know and respect very much. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I think I know the answer. I'll ask it anyway through the chair. Is this the event? I almost feel like Prince, formerly known as Douglas Days. That means yes, right? Okay, so it's interesting because Douglas Day is kind of more of a proclamation of Fort Langley and the first government. This is like actual history. So it wasn't set up for gender, it wasn't set up for age, it was set up for those folks that lived in Langley for a certain amount of time and were considered, all other communities have a pioneers. Richmond has pioneers, Vancouver has pioneers, everybody has pioneers. It's just basically a number of years. People are invited, friends and family, and the indigenous nations have pioneers that came and they drummed and they gave speech. So it was not specific to any group or organization. It was just a Douglas Day. Now, the group or the Douglas Day Committee has now named that, and I don't have any problem with them changing, but I just wanted to clarify that nothing to do with UNDRIP, the United Nations, or reconciliation, nothing like that. That was all a given. Everyone is invited. So those are my, and I don't see any, I'll support Councillor Pratt's motion. If he wants to come back and call it something else or just make it clear that it's a Township of Langley event and we invite people that I guess still adhere to a certain criteria. Thank you.
Councillor Richter?
I just want to point out that the word pioneer is very colonial, and it's a settler term. It's not a term that is used, to my knowledge, by First Nations. So, I mean, even if they could change it to the Langley Founders Luncheon, and which would recognize both First Nations and the settlers who came, that would be more appropriate than calling it pioneer.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And the vote will go whichever way it goes. But and to Councillor Ferguson's point, attending the first Douglas Day event of the term, it was a celebration of people who'd lived here a long time. So maybe one of the words or one of the terms we can use to change the name to is the longevity luncheon. I think that would be a nice middle ground. So appreciate it.
I might actually second a motion to change to suggest that, because a lot of good people there, and I hope that they're part of the longevity luncheon as long as possible. Okay, with that, I'm going to call the question, seeing no other discussion on that subsequent motion. Yeah, so I'll label that E4, Ms. Bauer. E4, just label E4. Yeah. And that carries with Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Pampopta opposed. So we're going to move on here. Mr. Backen, I think it's a bit confusing with the first two paragraphs. I'd like to dispose the Canada Day event item before moving on to Christmas. I think we could suffice to say we suggestion to move paragraph 2 with an addition, and then council can amend or defeat as it sees fit. Move an addition for option 2, the drone light show for Canada Day 2024. So the second paragraph would be drone or light show at the Township's Canada Day 2024 event with option 2 for a drone light show. I'll move that, an amended version of paragraph 2. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on that? Councillor Richter.
Why did drone lights cost $30,000 for one show?
The technology is expensive, and just comes down to it's all new. So yeah.
So is there any do we rent these drones or do
No,
we
it's put on by a
buy
company.
these?
It's put on by a company.
So this is a fee we're paying a company,
Yes.
$30,000.
Yeah, like the fireworks would be done by another company as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm pretty excited that the township's going to move in the direction of this. I think that every year that we see more and more videos come on social media of these very cool drone shows around the world, I think that'd be awesome to have here and mitigate some of the downsides of having a massive fireworks display in an urban area.
I agree. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, fireworks, you might guess my position on that. I'd rather see the drone light show between the pollution, the noise, and all the other nasty things that go with the fireworks show, and the potential for, especially at that time of the year, for ignition. So I'd be supporting the drone light show.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I was with some American friends on Canada Day, and this was quite a few years ago when we did fireworks, and they snickered, and I was embarrassed. So I'm thinking a drone light show might be a little bit more impressive, so I'm going to go with the B option.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm kind of curious to just give it a try.
Sure.
And then we'll see, revisit it again next year. I know what a fireworks show looks like. I don't know what a drone show is going to look like at the LEC, so I'd just give it a try, and we can look at it again next year. Councillor Martins?
Thank you. And I'm tending to lean towards the drone show. I too am very fascinated by the concept and would like to see how it looks. Question for staff, if I may, with regards to the budget, this amount, does it include for the cost of police or security with crowd management? I just know, having worked the fireworks in downtown Vancouver, and you can, obviously this isn't Vancouver, but there's going to be there will be a crowd, and just if that's included in the costing of this.
Yes, it is for both options there. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I mean, recognizing that money isn't unlimited, I still don't see how we can support $30,000 for a show that will go on one night for maybe half an hour, when we have a group of volunteers in the community that put on a light show for 3 weeks at Christmas. Like, I just don't think we're getting value for money here. Sorry.
Councillor Pampopta?
Yeah. I'm a proud Canadian, and as somebody whose partner is American, there's always kind of interesting commentary on how unpatriotic we are, even on Canada Day. We have some good events, and we've done some good events here in Langley, and that's great to see this investment into celebrating our nation. And one thing that's been missing for a long time since the event was canceled at McLeod Park is an evening event. And so I think, we shouldn't be pitting events against each other on the dollar worth. And it's really just, they're completely two different topics, Christmas and Canada Day. And so I'm excited that we're going to make this additional investment into our country and into our celebrations and being proud of who we are.
Okay. Thank you. Well, Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Well, I think it's a good discussion. I think Canada Day is important, and I do want to recall one of our colleagues, Councillor Ward, who's passed away, and he was a big proponent of Canada Day, and he made our council do whatever he could to support Canada Day. We brought senators in, we brought other members, we promoted it. We promoted the throughout Langley, so Langley was known as a proud community for Canada Day, and I'd like to continue that. And for anyone to think otherwise, I just wanted to remember our past colleague, Councillor Ward, who did an awful lot to promote Canada Day. Thank you.
Great. With that, I'm going to call the question. You've spoken twice, Councillor Richter, so I'm going to call the question on. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I have a point of order. Okay, well, you could say that. Go ahead.
I would like to know what exactly we're voting on. Are we voting just on B, or are we voting on B plus the $30,000 in the next paragraph?
It's the latter. But Ms. Bauer, can you please confirm?
As I understood the motion, we were voting for the light drone show plus the following paragraph of $30,000.
Okay, so we're voting on both those. Okay, thank you.
With that, I call the question on that version 4. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. So with the concern that the conversation around Christmas may be longer than I would hope for, I think, Chase, why don't we take a 5-minute recess, and we'll come back so we can carry on and complete this item without a recess. So we reconvene here in about 5 minutes, perhaps at 3:10. Thank you. Okay, so we'll get back underway. So I'm going to have no recommendations, no thoughts on how to process this. I will leave this up to members of council. So anybody wishes to move anything or change anything or advance anything, now's your time. Councillor Kunst?
Okay, so I'd like to make an amendment to the last one.
You have to move something first,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Okay, so I would like to, oh, okay, so first I'll move it. I thought it was already moved.
What are we moving?
Okay, the 5th paragraph.
So do you want to address the 5th paragraph before the 3rd, or deal with that separate?
Or we can do it, well, I'll
No,
tell-
no, it's fine. So we'll
Okay,
move, you're
sure.
moving the 5th one. Is that
Sure.
correct? Okay, so is there a seconder to the 5th paragraph? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. So go ahead.
Okay, so I would like to make an amendment to that and to make sure that they have the funding so that they can do their event. We've cut their grant in half to $25,000. And I think if we're talking about all the different things that, you know, and I'm supportive of all of it, I don't want to take this away, and this will hamper their ability to put on this event. And it's an accessible event. Kids come, this has been going on for 30 some odd years, and I just want to see it continue, as I want to see, I would love to see the Thunderbird event happen. I think that's got a lot of potential, but I don't want that to happen and then we not have Christmas in Williams Park. So.
Great. Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, I love this event. I've gone to it my whole entire life that it's been here. But there's some realities that we can't overlook any longer. It might be a victim of its own circumstance. The amount of media attention that was around it this past year created some things that we can no longer overlook, which is the traffic and the safety. When you hear reports and you see emails from the Ministry of Transportation communicating those issues of backups onto 232 onto the highway, for the next 2 Christmases, we're going to have that interchange being under construction. When you've got hours-long lineup that affect the residents on a single egress in and out dead-end road with a subdivision on it, we can't overlook the concerns of those residents anymore. And I know that when the delegate was here in the fall, they had said that nobody's ever complained or very few people had complained, but that's not the case anymore. And I think we would be remiss not to survey and canvass that community that lives on that single dead-end road to get their input and their concerns regarding this event. 30 years ago, Langley was significantly different in its demographic. We are 150,000 people. We are spreading the word wide on social media, news broadcasts about this event, and it created a monster this year. And as much as I love it as well, we can't overlook the safety. People driving in the wrong direction on the wrong side of the road because they've been blocked in traffic for hours trying to get home or trying to get out of the lineup. It's just not acceptable from a safety perspective anymore. I myself come from Fort Langley, was caught in that traffic many times at the closure of Glover Road. I'm forced to take 232 to get to Glover Road, and I too was caught in that traffic. And I think it's something that we need to address. We're doing it early enough this year where we can survey those residents and see what their concerns are. Ask the society how they want to manage traffic, how they can prevent traffic from backing up onto the highway. So these are the things that we need to consider. I don't think we should just blanket at this point approving the budget. I think we need to address the safety concerns first, and I think we should do that by surveying the residents.
Councillor Pratt?
Thank you, Your Worship. The challenge I had with this last year when it came to council was that, unfortunately, for whatever reason, it was dealt with at very much the last minute. And so I don't think that we could really come to a really solid solution on it either way. I still sort of stand by the fact that I think if we want to support it financially, that's great. And if we deal with that now or at a subsequent meeting here in the spring, that to me would give the society enough time to find the volunteers to keep it running. I saw that with the Aldergrove Fair, the 100 and some odd year Aldergrove Fair. There was a call out to say, if this doesn't get the volunteers it needs, this event will not be happening. And there was a huge groundswell of support for that event, and it will be continuing on in Aldergrove with township support where we can. So I think, to Councillor Van Popta's point, I think maybe today is not the right day to come to a conclusion on this. I think we need to have a bit more of an ongoing dialogue, because for me, with this event, I remember volunteering there on I think it was the last night. It was an incredibly busy night. It was unfortunately the night that one of the drivers decided to peel off and hit the truck. So that caused some concerns. I think if we go to some kind of ticketing but free system, so that we're not dealing with lineups of traffic back to 2:32 with people wondering if they're going to get in or not at the last minute, I think there's solutions that we can come to. So I'm not comfortable making a final decision today. I think I'd like to have some ongoing dialogue with the organization to come to a bit more amicable of a conclusion well in advance of November or September.
Okay. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I want to move to defer this with instructions. If I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Let's go through first-time speakers first, and then we can come back to you. Okay. Councillor Kunst?
Oh, okay. So, yeah, no, I hear all that. I guess.
Oh, sorry, you spoke once already.
Oh, wow. But I got the floor right now. You
do you
can't stop
do you want me to come back to you? Or do you want to speak to the? Do you want to speak to it a second time?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay, go
if you
ahead.
don't mind. Okay. So, why are we giving them $25,000 then? Why are we even going to bother if we're not going to support it fully? We know that $25,000, this is going to sort of make it so that, but if we've got safety concerns, traffic and all that kind of stuff, that's just my one point. But, you know, we have other events where we get complaints. You know, I remember a May Day parade where there was some irate, you know, people in Fort Langley couldn't get out because we had, you know, traffic concerns, you know, and we didn't like stop the May Day parade from happening. So I guess, you know, there isn't one event that we're going to put on in this township of Langley where we're not going to get the odd complaint. And if you have some idiot driving on the wrong side of the road, because, I mean, that is not the fault of the event. That's because we have idiots in the community that are now going to jeopardize a good event because of, so I'm sorry, but I don't think that's a very good argument for canceling Christmas in Williams Park, which is probably what will happen.
Great. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I just want to start by finding out, are we pre-approving 25 or 50K in this motion?
Mr. Bracken?
At this time, it's 25. We have not, we did not have a seconder for the amendment as it was not clearly spoken.
Okay, so in that case, I would be very much in agreement with Councillor Bailey on deferring this. I think the advantage of deferring it to another meeting would be also to allow the Christmas in Williams Park Society board members to come and address council again. I see that the president has sent us a very detailed letter in today's items distributed, where she has raised a number of very important questions, such as, is there a list of the materials and decorations? Only staff has this information. Is there an order in how the displays go up? Is there an order in how they're taken down? What guarantees are there for support in Christmas in Williams Park going forward? She's made the case, I think, extremely strongly for why staff support is important, and also referenced in here the fact that the $50,000 grant that they would give us, or that we would give them, they would use that, I guess, to purchase staff time in order to assist, because they do have a fairly large contingent of seniors who are helping them with this event. So I think the fair thing to do is to defer it, and I think we should also include in that deferral an invitation to the society to speak to us at the next meeting.
Councillor Martins?
Thank you. I too am in support of a deferral on this. I think this needs to be further unpacked. it's interesting when we talk about speaking to the people who live there and how they feel about it. Well, I'm gathering just from what I'm hearing that there are maybe some mixed feelings about that. The night that I volunteered with Councillor Bailey, I remember a fellow distinctly rolling in and letting us know he's local. He lives right there, and he says, I know you guys are getting a lot of bad press here and with the lineups, et cetera, and I'm just here personally to let you know. I just came off work, I waited in all the traffic, and I drove through, and I loved it. And I love this event, and I come here every year, and I live right here. So there are obviously some mixed reviews, and I think it's important that we further explore that. And I think it's also reasonable to recognize that any event is always going to cause disruption to the community, disruption in parking, possibly noise, what have you. And I think that goes with hosting an event. And I think it just has to be managed, but it's to be expected. So those are my thoughts. And I also talked about the buses coming through. And frankly, and I had a conversation with Mr. Pack there on break about his event. And I really saw the value of having a drivable light display of some sort, because there are people, and that is the only way that they are able to get out and see Christmas lights. So I would just feel comfortable deferring this, I think, and unpacking this a little further. Thank you.
Councillor Rampopta, so you want to make it, you wanted to...
I just have one more response.
So go ahead. Yeah. All right.
So fully agree, events cause disruption. But if anybody here can speak to any event which causes disruptions for 3 weeks straight to people who have no other option, I'd be more than willing to hear it. This isn't a one-day event. This is 3 weeks every night that people are housebound or take hours to get in and out of their house. That aside, something that nobody's ever mentioned is perhaps moving it. Could we move it to Aldergrove Park? That's a township, not a metro park, correct?
That's correct. Well, Aldergrove Regional or
Yeah.
Aldergrove Athletic?
Ooh, regional.
That's Metro Vancouver. Yeah.
Darn it. Yeah, okay, forget that then.
Yeah. So, Councillor Bailey, you said you specifically said you had a deferral.
Yes, I'd like to defer this with instructions.
I'll second.
Well, let's get the instructions first before you know what we're deferring. But go ahead. What is your deferral?
Yeah, when we're talking about this in just for
Do
Christmas
you wish to
fair-
move the deferral first, or?
I did. I thought I did. How's that?
You mentioned deferral with instructions. I'm not clear on what that is. What do you?
So now that I've moved it, I can speak to the deferral motion, right?
So are you just deferring it for one council meeting?
No, I want to.
So I'm not clear what is the nature of the deferral that you've moved.
The nature of the deferral, and that's why I was going to speak to what I'm saying, is that when we initially looked at this at Christmas, okay, it was a spur of the moment thing.
Okay, I don't mean to be a stickler for process, but I'm trying to say when you move a deferral motion, it has to be specific. What is moved and deferred? And you mentioned
Okay.
deferral with instructions. I don't know what that means, and that hasn't been seconded yet. So I'm just, you can just get to the motion, and then of course you can speak to it.
Okay, here's the trick, is because I want to defer it probably for 5-6 months. And if I get a chance to speak to it,
Okay, so
I'll
you would
give
move
you a reason.
you would move deferral to September.
No, we're not in June or July.
So your
Doesn't matter.
deferral motion is to, because you have to pick a month or a meeting. June. And are you attaching any conditions to that deferral?
Yes.
What would those be?
Conditions are, one, I want to see a budget, okay? Every society in British Columbia must provide a budget annually. I want to see that. That was not included in that letter. And when I see that there are 35,000 people that were supporting it, I also want to make sure that the ongoing discussions, and there are discussions going on right now under instruction from this council, I want to have the opportunity of Christmas in Williams Park and staff to be able to talk about parking. I want to talk about surveying the neighbors. I want to talk about the traffic control. Let's talk about these issues that are being raised right now. And that's going to take a couple of months. So that's why I'm saying I'll make it to June, and the instructions are, but I definitely,
Yeah, I'm trying to be helpful, so it could be a referral back to staff to do those things, because if you just defer it, there's no action taken until it returns.
I was going to say referral to
So
staff.
you meant to say referral to staff. So you're going to refer this back to staff to explore concerns raised by the community? I'm trying to get to a motion, right?
Because what I really want is I want the two parties to be talking. Okay, that is key here. They didn't have the chance to do that, and there are all kinds of things that have to be discussed, as has been discussed here earlier. So refer to staff with a report back in June, and that report would include, I want to see the budget that is submitted to the societies, BC societies, as every society has to do. So that is not onerous on this society. That is something they have to do annually. I want to see it. This is, at 25,000 is the largest grant, let alone at 50,000 is a very large grant. And I want to see how the money's being collected. It's 35,000 people plus, according to the president's letter there. Should have brought in a significant amount of money, and that is why I said earlier, this is not a free event. This is an event by donation. And I would like to see how much those donations are and how they're spending it on I know lights are expensive, and I want to give the two parties adequate time to bring a plan that would be satisfactory to both sides back to this council to make an informed decision.
Okay, so that would be a referral back to staff to report back to council within the month of June regarding budgetary concerns, donations.
But also, ongoing discussions must be managed because they've already had meetings, and that was the key to the motion of giving them $50,000 last Christmas, was that immediately after, they would start talking and have adequate time to be able to work out a solution that both parties could live with.
Ms. Bauer, do you have this potentially drilled down in a motion for Councillor Bailey to consider?
I
Mine
think
are
I
always
can help.
fun, aren't they?
So, number one, Councillor Bailey wants to see the budget of the society. That can we can do. We can defer till that. Number two, he wants staff to work with organizers regarding the concern of the comments that have been received, and he would like a preliminary plan, I guess, for the event so that council can have better deliberation on it.
But to be fair to the society, I want them to be able to put forward their discussion points. Okay, I'm not insensitive to the fact that this is a long-standing tradition. Hell, I went and
I have not sensed any
donations.
hesitation on behalf of the organizer to advocate for their position.
Well, I want to make sure that it's adequately discussed, not just one discussion and a letter written.
Bauer, do you believe that captures it? Okay, so that's referral could be amended by council, is that correct?
Yes,
That's correct. So the referral can be further amended if people have other things they would like to see occur within these discussions. Is there a seconder to this? Seconded by Councillor Kunst. So I am going to clear the queue and open up a referral motion. Sorry, you have to do it again. Everybody, okay, go ahead. There you are. So you can speak to the referral. Councillor Van Popte, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to amend the referral to add in a survey piece of canvassing the folks between or that are on that single in and out road. I've got the cross streets here. To canvass the residents between 65 Avenue and 78 Avenue and 232nd and roughly 244th.
Okay, so let's just dispose of that. And I think I've run out of buttons. So there we go. I'm going to do that. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. So I have to clear the queue again. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to that amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on that amendment. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. So now back to the referral as amended. Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to have clarification, if I could, from the mover. You're referring to the two parties. Can you clarify who the two parties are in your comments?
Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
That would be staff on one side and representatives from Christmas and Williams Park Society.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, and I do support that, but I also believe that there has been conversations. I believe staff was speaking with the society last season and having conversations and trying to, address some of the concerns raised. So I don't want that to be lost, that there has been efforts and conversation. And I completely support unpacking this further, like I said, and bringing both parties to the table and sorting this through and hearing the input from the community surrounding them.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, the community grant program, we've got this pre-approving 25K from that grant program. If we wanted to take it up to 50K, can we take 50K from the community grant program? Maybe Mr. Backen and his staff can answer.
Mr. Backen?
We do have limited funds in the community grant program, and we did reduce it by $100,000 this year, so we'd have to look at who that might impact.
Okay. And would there be any reason why the society couldn't make a delegation to council between now and June concerning their issues?
Mr. Backen, I don't see why not, right?
That's correct. The delegates simply by filling out a form.
And council could revisit this direction at any time.
That's correct.
Okay. And would there be any problem if the 25 or the 50 preferably was used to purchase staff support with the event?
Mr. Backen?
Not directly. I mean, caution would have to be provided to make sure that there's an understanding that that's what the money is being used for, which they're attempting to do. Of course, I think the importance is to ensure that the purchase of the time, if you will, would be comprehensive. The concern would be overtime or just additional time that may be needed beyond what the original 25,000 or the original 50,000 would pay.
Okay. And if the society chose to make a delegation and indicated they needed to have this report before June in order to get their planning process ready for Christmas of 2024, would there be a problem in doing it at an earlier meeting?
It's the triggering event is the time of their delegation or communication with council. That's what entirely governs the timing of their delegation.
Okay. So they could basically start talking to staff now, even if a report doesn't come until June?
They can always communicate with staff. I think the suggestion would be better served to communicate with members of council, or as you've suggested, point out to them that a delegation to talk to the entire council is the most.
Yeah, I think there should be a delegation, but that would be their call, I would believe. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Backen.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you. I think the reality for me is that if we're going to spend money on this event, which is worthwhile to continue, I'd like to see that money be spent towards the staff time required to instruct the society on how to run this event moving forward. If they have 35,000 people coming through those gates, surely there are people who will want to volunteer to keep the event going. And surely with 35,000 people attending it, the financials would show that the event is self-sustaining, I would think, especially if it's by donation. So I think that I'd actually prefer to see the report brought forward. I think that the earlier that we can do this, the better. I want both parties here to be acting in completely good faith. I want us to get to a solution that works for everybody. I think that we can. I think that it's going to happen, especially if we start the communication now effectively. And I don't always necessarily know if the delegation is the most effective way to resolve these kind of issues because of the complexity of it. So I'm happy that staff and party communication is going to happen. I don't know if there's an appetite to bring up the report to an earlier month, May, April, something like that, because then this way there could be no claim made that there's not enough time to try and come to an alternative solution. So I'd actually move an amendment that the report be brought forward by the first meeting of May.
Okay, we can come back to you. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you. I remember the discussion we had so that we could indeed get the folks at the Christmas in Williams Park an opportunity to have it again in 2023 along with the budget and staff help and continuation of the lights and other things they already had. So that was like a win-win. Now, moving forward, council also made a decision to work with whomever would put on events, and I think that's where we are right now. So my question, I think I already know the answer. Anyone applying for a grant or something, and we have a lot of different grants, are they not required to put some kind of documentation regarding the reason why the funds are requested and some accounting whatsoever, if I may, through the chair?
Your worship, the delegate request form is really providing the overview. Generally, what you're suggesting is done after hearing the delegation, if there's further interest from council to provide that information or obtain that information. The group can volunteer that information, but per se, there's no specific requirement as to the documentation required when they present their delegation.
But what I'm actually meant supplemental is the grant program. Any group or ABC group applying for a grant would have to submit some kind of request in writing and also the financials accordingly, and then our staff looks at it and grant it accordingly?
The grant application would have to have that information going forward. That's correct. That would actually be something that would be part of the grant application process, the application forms and the conversations with staff. So
hopefully the folks from Christmas and Williams Park, I mean, I think that it's important that Councillor Bailey indicated, letting this go on, whether it's to June or something prior to that, I don't know. But there's a number of issues that need to be addressed. I remember it was addressed last year, and perhaps it could be addressed this year as well. But I think that's the path we're going down. Thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I've got no problem with May as long as there is a compressed schedule of discussions. I want to make sure that both parties get a chance to talk to each other, go away, talk to their own societies and come back. And negotiations like this that don't happen in a closet and quickly. And when I couple that with, fully agree with Councillor Pratt. When someone says there's 35,000 people more and then says they only have a limited base, I can tell you what I would be doing. I would be canvassing those 35,000 people, and I would come up with the people and the resources to do this, and tell the TOL that they can take a walk on this one. We're self-sustaining. Thank you very much for your help in the past, and that is what I would like to actually see, is that Williams Park gain a much greater support base on their own. And I'm a big believer in doing your work, and this should be the work of the society to go and see what their support in the community actually looks like. And when they sit there and say there's 35,000 plus people, they've got cars backed up to Highway 1, that would indicate to me that I would be mining that support base real hard. And if they could handle this on their own with probably some adequate finances that have been raised, I'd love to see them be able to do this on their own without our help and not have to worry about us fooling around with it.
Okay, so Councillor Pratt, do you wish to make that amendment?
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment that the report to council be brought to council no later than the meeting on May 13th.
Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on that? Go ahead.
I think the last point that I would make is that I can only imagine that staff recognize the level of urgency and dedication that council here is acting here with. So I'm sure that staff will take that in consideration. And I would hope that the same thing can be said about the society, that if we're bringing this report by May, to Councillor Bailey's point, conversations need to happen now. They needed to happen yesterday, and they have been happening, to Councillor Martins' point. So I think that we are well on our way to finally finding a permanent solution here.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting discussion, and I certainly support this amendment. But, I also wanted to bring something up that Councillor Richter had commented on about getting information from the delegations. I'm a member of the Rotary Club, and we had something called Rib Fest. It's 100% supported by volunteers in the Rotary Clubs. They work with the Township of Langley. We use their land, McLeod Athletic Park, and we raise the money 100% for charity. So that's a good example of an organization coming forward, doing it all on their own volunteer, raise the money, and put the money back in the community as a charity. Because as you know, Rotarians, we don't collect money, we give our own money back. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst on the amendment to May.
Okay, well, I was just going to ask Mr. Backen to remind us why we ended up with Christmas and as a society, and maybe we don't need that reminder, but it's a little different than Rib Fest and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to.
That's fair. Every event and every organization is unique. Yeah. So seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on the amendment to May. That carries with Councillor Rent opposed. I'm sorry. So we're now back to the referral as amended. I appreciate the referral, Councillor Bailey, and I appreciate the desire to see this completed more quickly. Mr. Backen, you know, I've struggled with this one. I think history is important. It's on a township piece of property. It's on a township park. It's managed, essentially, and all the work is done by township staff, but yet it's not a township event. And perhaps it should be. And perhaps those can be added to the discussions. If township staff are doing it, taxpayers paying for it, and the organizer has indicated in writing they're not capable of putting on the event without the township, perhaps that should also be explored, that the township simply take it over. So I would ask that that be part of the conversation. So with that, I'll call the question on the referral. That carries with unanimously. Is there any other motions anybody wishes to make? We don't have to wait for other business either. Is there any other motions related to Christmas events that any member of council would like to make? Councillor Kunst? We didn't address number 3. No, we've got to clear the queue. You don't have to move anything. We don't have to proceed with anything. If any member of council wishes to move any motion related to Christmas, now, I understand, Councillor Richter. Go ahead.
Okay, the paragraph that says that council authorized the use of up to $94,000 in operating funds for electrical improvements at Derek Doubleday. I think that should just be deferred as requested by the delegation today.
It also doesn't have to be acted upon in any form.
Okay, well, that's fine too.
So if there's no other motions related to Christmas, Councillor Richter?
Well, I think there is. I think we had a delegation today that's looking at developing an option, and how do we proceed with that?
Mr. Bracken, any suggestions?
If we wish to pursue the submission, that could be done at this point, Your Worship, or later on, a motion to refer the delegation.
Process it now while Christmas is such a lively topic of conversation. Go ahead.
So it could be referred to staff to work with the proponents to better understand and outline their submission in terms of a supplemental event.
Does anybody wish to move that?
I will move that.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, call the question on that referral. That carries unanimously. Is there any other items or any motions under E4? Great, seeing none, we'll move on to item E5, capital request for Smith Athletic Park offsite works. I will move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on E5? Seeing none, call the question on E5. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Item E6, I will move the amended version of the recommendation that I emailed out, the second amended version. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on E6, the amended version? Councillor Richter.
Okay, we're still taking money from the RCMP to put into the fire apparatus. Is that correct?
Mr. Bracken?
There is a internal loan being recommended that's going with that. So the effective answer is we're borrowing funds from the RCMP to utilize for the equipment purchase.
Okay. Well, I have a concern here because I think that giving preferential treatment to one department at the expense of other departments isn't fair. Thank you.
Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. Along that theme, with regard to the RCMP reserve, I have a question for staff, if I may, through the chair. What is the current balance in the RCMP reserve?
Mr. Bracken?
The current balance is 11.846 million.
Thank you. So is it fair to assume that, I know this council has already approved some projects for the RCMP detachment in a previous meeting. Will those be able to proceed at the same time, or are they going to be put on hold because of this loan?
Mr. Bracken?
They should not be impacted by this loan.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that, because then I don't see that we're pitting one against the other in that case. It sounds like we are looking after the needs of both agencies, and I feel they are equally vital. So I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
Councilor Bailey?
When I saw this one pop up, believe me, since I'm the big mouth that said, can we build a gym up on the second floor there? I asked, is this going to slow down one thing that we have planned for the RCMP? And I was led to believe no. So I have complete confidence in that. And speaking to the whole thing, I think this is incredibly important that it be done now. If you read the report, you'll find that these, well, you know what? How about, could I get Chief DeRoy up, please?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Chief, through the chair, this can get a little confusing, but I can appreciate the wrangling and financial thought that has gone into this and the advantages. Could you explain why we want to do this at this time and some of the financial advantages that we're gaining by doing it at this time, please?
Through your worship, for sure. So at this time, we've identified 7 fire apparatus that are due for replacement over the next 5 years. Significant savings can be realized for the township by paying upfront in full. Costs of the ordered fire apparatus become fixed costs and are no longer subject to change. Also, significant staff time and costs will be saved by no longer having to conduct the same process annually for the next 5 years. It will also enhance our 5-year replacement schedule, will help standardize our fire fleet, which not only assist from a mechanical and service perspective, like ordering parts, streamlining service and repairs, but also assist with standardizing and streamlining training and emergency operations, translating to not only an expedited turnaround of fire apparatus from mechanical repairs and servicing, but also a safer experience at emergency incidents and at training events. Well, this will not only assist us with maintaining a level of service that our residents expect, but it's also going to help set us up for the next level of service in the future as well.
So if I can get you to go to page 3, please, and that table that you've got there. And above that, in the paragraph above that, it says that per NFPA guidelines and standards that you replace the vehicles after 15 years. Am I reading that correct?
Through your worship, that's correct.
Yeah, what about the heavy rescue? How's that doing?
Through your worship, that's correct. It's currently 30 years old and will be 31 years old at the time of replacement.
Now, my math isn't as good. I don't have a calculator with me, but that's a little more than 15 years, I believe.
Through your worship, that's correct.
Increased maintenance costs?
Through your worship, that's correct.
What about, do we have a vehicle in there that has about 200,000 K on it?
Through your worship, we have a number of fire apparatuses that have in excess of 200,000 kilometers due to the size of our township.
And when you're talking to providers of our vehicles, is that common?
Through your worship, not in my experience. I've seen usually half the kilometers for the same age of apparatus, as I mentioned, with 316 square kilometers to cover, and the amount of wear and tear that we put on our apparatus, it's more than I've seen.
So if I'm looking at the table that we get in a lot of these things, urgent, high, medium, and all that kind of stuff, which one would you classify buying these vehicles in the exact manner that we're doing? How would you classify that?
Through your worship, I would say that it's critical.
Okay, and by doing it also, are we saving a very significant amount of money that will result in making the fleet better?
Through your worship, that's correct.
Can you describe that, please?
Yes. So by entering into this multi-year service agreement and paying up front in full, prepayment discounts over $800,000, $807,772. There's also savings on the two mini pumpers. The current price for those is $580, but we're looking at a savings of over $52,000 between the two of them.
So by getting these two additional squads that we've got, one in service right now, how's that going to help us with maintenance and wear and tear on the existing and the new vehicles that will be coming?
Through your worship, we believe it's going to make an enhanced impact for sure. Squad 4, which was our first mini pumper that went into service at Hall 4, has had an immediate impact.
That's all for me. Thank you, Chief.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, I think, oh my goodness, Councillor Bailey, he hit the button before me. And I'm not in that area. I'm just a teacher with a mathematics background, but I did want to say that he pointed it out. I was going through the report and I was looking at the savings. I see that you even brought Chief Jenkins with you. Welcome. And he's my former neighbor. And I used to see you when you were a small little guy. Anyway, so I saw the savings, but I did want to say that you pointed, I'm going to say something humorous now. You pointed out that the township of Langley, 316 square kilometers. That's actually, that's less, we're actually less than that. That's the size of Surrey is 316 square kilometers. I think we're closer to 304 or 306. Because that way we would be the exact same size as Surrey, and they always say we're bigger than us. So anyway, I certainly, it's a good report. You know, I always point out, and Councillor Bailey always beats me to the mic, is the fact that we plan for the future. And just like when we brought in full-time firefighters, we're planning for the future at the time. People, why are you doing this? And again, this is another example. So congratulations on your work. We're planning for the future. Well done.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Popta?
Thank you. I love proactive work. I love seeing reports like this. I think it's great. Just wanted to find out how long this plan is good for. How, are we going to see another report next year for another $10 million in equipment? Like, how often are you going to do this type of review?
Through your worship, this is something that's updated annually, but this will look after us for the next 5 years.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, so in addition to the $25 million for the fire hall, the 19 new firefighters, we did equipment approvals not that long ago. I've got some questions here. How much has gone into the fire budget in the last 12 months, including this new $10.844 million?
We have an annual contribution to the Fire Equipment Replacement Reserve of $3 million, from which we make those expenditures.
Okay, but this $10.8 million is not coming from that entire, like, it's not coming all from that one file, it's coming, or account. Okay, this $10.844 million, is this an open bid or a sole source bid?
Through your worship, I'm just going to find my notes here, give you a little bit more information. So obviously I've had a lot of discussions with Mr. Erickson through purchasing. It is a fair process. We have, the township has a cooperative purchasing group agreement in place with Sourcewell Canoe, and this gives the township of Langley and the fire department the ability to procure from a selected supplier.
Okay, so this particular commercial emergency equipment company, that's a sole supplier. Did we have any other bids on this?
Through your worship, there's a number of suppliers, including the two largest ones that are part of that cooperative buying group. So this does meet all the requirements in the free trade agreement and our procurement policy as well.
Okay, I don't think you're quite answering my question. Is this sole source?
They'll be our selected supplier, that's correct.
Okay, because didn't we just get another piece of equipment from this same company?
Through your worship, we have 2 engines, correct, that are coming.
Okay, and now what kind of sales commissions are we going to be paying on all of this?
Through your worship, I'm not sure of that information.
Do we pay sales commissions when we buy vehicles like this?
Not that I'm aware of, but I think that would be a question for our purchasing.
Okay, perhaps Mr. Backen, do we normally, I mean, is commission usually included?
Typically, we actually acquire for a specified price. What the vendor does with that, or the person bidding, is really up to them. I would presume there's some compensation for their sales force. I would assume they do it gratuitously.
Okay, and do we know who the sales representative is?
I don't know them by name, no.
Yeah, through your worship, it's Mr. Thompson, who represents commercial vehicle equipment, emergency equipment.
Okay, and he's with LUSA too, isn't he?
Through your worship, I believe that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Martins?
Thank you. Hi, Chief. Thank you for being here. Just looking at the process you just outlined about finding a suitable vendor and the right trucks, I just want to focus on the last part of that, the right trucks. I will share a story shortly, but I appreciate firsthand that emergency vehicles and that sort of equipment is limited in its availability, and equally important to have the best product possible for our personnel. So were you part of being able to figure out what would be best for Langley's needs, you know, with your expertise?
Through your worship, that's correct. We had to be very creative here, because normally, as outlined in the report, we order custom apparatus, so there's usually a process where we essentially build the trucks from top to bottom, from every nut to bolt to lug nut. And because of the 42-month lead time, we've sort of had to pivot and look for creative solutions. So what we're doing in this arrangement is finding a stock truck or stock apparatus that we can modify and closely suit the rest of our trucks so we can standardize everything. So with that, gets us the timelines, gets us the quicker turnaround, and also by doing this all together, there's significant savings that come with it.
Thank you. Yeah, I just go back to my early days in policing. I was driving a vehicle that I'm sure was a really good deal for whoever was responsible for purchasing them, but they were patrol cars powered by natural gas. And if I was responding code 3 to a call, I felt like Fred Flintstone trying to get the thing going and get there in a hurry. And the best part was when you'd seize or find property, open up the trunk, and there is no trunk space because it's the entire gas tank. So, you know, that's why I'm asking about it, because there can be a disconnect between wanting to be fiscally responsible and also making sure we look after the true needs of the people that need to utilize the equipment. So thank you for that, and I appreciate you being here today to answer all of our questions.
Thank you.
Councilor Bailey?
Chief, is a big advantage of doing this deal standardizing the fleet?
Through your worship, that's correct. There's many advantages from the safety and from mechanical turnaround from service perspective for sure.
Is there another vendor around here that sells Pierce?
Through your worship, no.
So this is the only one that you could go to if you wanted to standardize the fleet?
Through your worship, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that answers that. So I want to appreciate that. I want to appreciate the work that's gone into this and the creativity working with finance to put this together. You know, from what I learned about it, that, you know, by paying up front, we essentially lock in supply, which is another big problem with lead times and delivery dates and other things. We may end up with trucks well past their lifetime. And I appreciate you putting the work in to get ahead of that. And not for firefighters, but for people that rely on firefighters to potentially save their lives. And I certainly take that seriously. And appreciate you taking it seriously and finding a way to get this equipment presented to council to acquire and ensure that we have it. You know, anyone can criticize that, but it's harder to get the work done and find a way to pay for it. You know, I appreciate utilizing the annual transfer to the fire equipment and apparatus reserve basically ahead of time. So that this will be completely funded from existing budget envelopes that are already in place to pay for equipment that we know we're going to need. And it will be 100% paid for by that reserve, based contradicting other statements of fact that aren't factual. So I appreciate that very much, that those are the facts, and I appreciate the work that you've put into this, and obviously I support it. And with that, I see no other discussion. I'll call the question on E6 as amended, moved as amended. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Move on to G1. Thank you very much. Move on to G1. Housing agreements, bylaw number 5997, bylaws for first, second, and third reading. Does anybody wish to move that? It's moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on G1? Seeing none, call the question on G1. That carries unanimously. Item G2, I'll move that. Bylaw number 59, Langley fees and charges, bylaw amendments, bylaw number 5992, 5993. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. I'd like to move deferral of this for one meeting, but we can certainly discuss it first. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question about the increased fees to the user groups, and have they been notified of these? Have they had any input on it?
At this stage, we haven't engaged in public input. I believe the theme is to proceed in accordance with previous council direction with the rates of inflation with some further adjustments. If council wishes to have public input, that's certainly the direction they can provide.
Well, I think they should at minimum be notified of these changes. And I guess a deferral for one meeting will allow that to occur. Thank you.
Right, so I'll move deferral to March 25th. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on that deferral? Seeing none, call the question on the deferral of G2. That carries unanimously. Item G3, credit card service bylaw fee amendments, bylaw number 5995. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Rent. Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion on G3? None, call the question on G3. That carries unanimously. The 2024 local area service tax bylaw, bylaw number 5996. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Rent. Any discussion on G4? Seeing none, call the question on G4. That carries unanimously. G5, Smith Athletic Park Detention Works Loan Bylaw, bylaw number 5999. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on G5? Seeing none, call the question on G5. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. G6, Smith Athletic Park Loan Bylaw, bylaw number 5998 for site preparations, capital works paid for by development cost charges. I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on G6? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. So when this particular park is, well, we're obviously borrowing to build it, will all the different soccer groups in Langley be able to use this park, or is it going to be dedicated for one particular group?
Mr. Backen?
At the present time, we have a park, I guess, allocation policy, user group allocation policy, but we anticipate the need to review that with council prior to the park being completed, just because there may be some financial contributions from various user groups we'll have to take into account.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. See no other discussion. I'll call the question on G6. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. G7, bylaw number 6000 for the Smith Athletic Park development portion, authorization bylaws. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on G7? Seeing none, call the question on G7. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Bylaws for final adoption, I1 Highway Development Works Agreement bylaw, bylaw number 5982. Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, we did at the last meeting have two delegations regarding the needs for truck park. And originally, there was going to be a truck park in this particular area. Will there be a truck park coming in this particular area?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, one of the sites that has, I believe it's a second item I2 that's seeking final adoption, was historically a truck park with a loading bay. They already had a zone in place. I believe it was subsequently purchased by the proponent, who is now seeking a development permit to build an industrial building.
Okay, so a site that could have been used for truck parks is now going to be gone. Okay, thank you.
Call the question on I1. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. I2, rezoning application number 100692, bylaw number 5830, moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on I2? Seeing none, I'll call the question on I2. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. And I2, the development permit application number 101304, 101386. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Any discussion on the development permits for I2? Seeing none, I'll call the question on I2. Development permits. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. I3, rezoning application number 100540. Bylaw number 5604, moved by Councillor Rint, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on I3? Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through yourself to staff, I'm wondering if there's been any indication from the proponent for the live-work portion of what kind of tenants or activities or whatnot. I know that the people who live in these units will be able to use them, but I'm wondering if there's been any indication what they'll actually be used for, as opposed to just another front storage space for the people who live above.
Mr. Bracken.
Through your worship to Councillor Pratt, there has been no indication by the proponent the exact tenant or use for the work and live townhouse.
Is there any mechanism that the township has to ensure that the live-work portion actually gets worked in?
Through your worship to Councillor Pratt, I don't believe we have an exact restrictive covenant or agreement to ensure there's a certain type of tenant in the work aspect of the townhouse designation, live-work designation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on I3? Seeing none, call the question on I3. That carries unanimously. The development permit application number 101019. I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Rint. Any discussion on the development permit for I3? Seeing none, call the question. I3 development permit. That carries unanimously. Items from prior meetings, J1, Rural Plan Amendment, Salmon River Uplands, bylaw number 5983. It's back on the floor, Ms. Bauer. Is that correct? It was deferred. Is that correct? So it's back on the floor? Great.
Exactly.
Is there any other discussion to J1? Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think one of the things we heard pretty clearly at the last meeting or at the public hearing was that the trail network is a high priority for a lot of people. So I will have a subsequent motion once first-time speakers are done.
All right, great. Councillor Richter?
Yes, I thought there was some very considered input that came in at the public hearing from the residents who were here. I think a significant amount of that input is covered in the delegation that was made by Ms. Stelting from the North Otter community of Salmon River Uplands. We have a copy of this in the items distributed to council on February 29th, page 8. I would like to refer this back to staff to incorporate the concerns that arose as a result of the public hearing.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Another first-time speakers. Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I heard loud and clear too, and I think that we've been at this a long time in this area, and I think the trail network, and I look forward to Councillor Pratt's motion, was something that we heard loud and clear, that this is something that they just really want some clear planning and not just, sort of the fuzzy well, we'll see, hopefully we can do it. So, if there's some way that we can make sure that that happens, then I would be happy to support the rural plan. Thanks.
Councillor Richter, go ahead.
I
Do you wish
thought-
to make a referral motion?
Oh, I thought Councillor Pratt was ahead of me.
He's doing a subsequent motion.
Oh, okay, yes, I'd
In a-
like to refer this plan back to staff to incorporate the changes and issues that were raised in the public hearing, including the list of items on page 8 of item, which item was that, sorry. Item 2, distributed to council on February 29th, 24.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Kunst. Go ahead, Councillor Victor.
Yeah, the trail network needs absolutely to be addressed, but I think there's also concern with regards to ecological targets and tree canopy targets that need to be dealt with as well. And as Ms. Stelting raised, the issue of light pollution is something that probably needs more strength in a council policy, particularly as this is a rural area that's about to become a little more residential, but those things like pot lights have long been a concern in the Salmon River uplands and needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on the referral. J1. And that's defeated. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Martins, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Now back to the third and final reading. Councillor Pratt, did you have something more?
No, it'll be the subsequent motion.
Subsequent motion. So I think great. I'll call the question on J1. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Councillor Pratt, go ahead. You had something related to this, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So the issue about trail network and connectivity, I think, is very valid. I think what would be nice is to be able to provide both potential development proponents and members of the community a little bit more certainty of what that will actually look like, so that we can kind of stop having a roundabout conversation of where the trail is going to go or what it's going to look like. So the motion reads that council directs staff to report to council with potential financial implications and timelines associated with a cohesive and interconnected trail network plan for the Salmon River uplands as may be possible for council to consider.
I'll second it. Is there any discussion on this subsequent motion? Go ahead, Councillor Pratt.
No, I think it speaks for itself. I think it'd be nice to be able to see what it looks like.
Yeah, great. And Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, Councillor Pratt and I have talked about trails considerable amount of times, and it's something that's near and dear. And if we can enhance our trail network within the township, I'm all for it.
Councillor Ferguson?
It's interesting because going down, talking to the residents over the last year or so, probably a couple of years, is they consistently emphasize the importance of trails, and in some of the past developments application, they didn't have an awful lot of trails and things like that. So we're listening to the public, and I think it's a good idea. I thank Councillor Pratt for bringing it to our attention again.
Yeah, I agree. Councillor Martins?
Thank you, and thank you to Councillor Pratt for bringing this forward. I too have been getting a lot of input from the residents there, and I think this is what's really important to them. I was hoping to read your mind, and that was where you were going with this, so it's nice to know we've got a mind meld here. I do have a question, if I may, for staff, just procedurally. With these motions, it's more than changing a word or two, and it's a couple lines long. I don't know if you received this in advance. I know at some point we were getting these up on the screen when there was an amendment. And I guess maybe a request to my colleagues here at the table then, if that's not happening, if we can, because it certainly makes it, it creates for a better conversation at the table here if we have that in front of us and we know clearly what it is we're discussing. So that's just a friendly request, and Councillor Pratt, I fully support your motion here.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think that's a valid point. It's my mistake. I worked on it at the last minute, trying to get the wording just right, and sort of didn't have the chance. So, well taken, though.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll call the question on that subsequent motion for J1. That carries unanimously. K&L, does anybody wish to make a mayor or council report, Metro Vancouver, or other regional report? Councillor Martins.
Thank you. Yeah, as a council report, I just want to acknowledge that March 8th on Friday was International Women's Day. And as a councillor, I was fortunate to attend 2 events here in the community. One on the weekend, there are several of us there, a luncheon hosted by the Langley Rotary Clubs, and celebrating Women's Day and having the opportunity to hear from a speaker, Taylin McGill, and her incredible story of resilience. And to see the support of her family. That was a wonderful presentation. And I wanted to express my congratulations to the award winners at that event. The other event that I was able to attend was the Chamber of Commerce has the Langley Women's Business Network, their luncheon, and it was a sold-out room. And that was a wonderful event as well. And in the spirit of women doing amazing things, I just wanted to highlight 2 of our basketball teams, high school basketball games, the 2024 BC School Girls Basketball Championships that were hosted here in Langley at the LEC. And not 1, but 2 teams from Langley of the 4 divisions were successful. The Langley Christian Lightning won the 1A tournament, and the Brookswood Bobcats won the 3, shout out to the Brookswood Bobcats, the 3A tournament. And that is just amazing. I feel that the women were representing here in Langley well in the last couple of weeks. And in closing, I would say, here's to strong women. May we know them. May we be them. May we raise them. Thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I want to talk about Women's Day too, but in real fact, there are 3 Women's Days that a lot of times don't get mentioned. One is December the 6th, March 8th, and November the 25th, and they all deal with violence and women. I wear this pin, and I've worn this pin, a white ribbon, for well over 20 years now, and I remember when Jack Layton in 1991 actually started the White Ribbon campaign. And it is because of things like this that there is awareness. And because this council has repeatedly chose to not make proclamations, I can't understand how we would not want to support making proclamations about days that want to combat violence against women. And, I come from a very male family. I come from a very male occupation. And I actually even look at this council. And if you look at the makeup of this council, there are 4 women and there are 4 men. We're not counting the mayor, he's not a councillor. So we have an equitable balance that not a lot of places get. And, the reason I missed for the first time in decades a women's event on March the 5th is because on March the 6th, I buried my mother. Now that lady is the epitome of someone who didn't do the political stuff to gain a recognition and didn't do some of the, like in labor and all that. She worked with men in men's environments, much like police now, much like fire, and much like ambulance that I can speak to. And it is those women who go into male environments and prove themselves every single day on what they can achieve. And if you go right back to the Second World War, where the hell would we have been without women working in the armaments? So in the future, I'm hoping that we can recognize December the 6th, November the 25th, and March the 8th from this council as being supporters of stopping violence against women. I had to borrow this pin back from my 5-year-old granddaughter. That's when we should be starting to do education and awareness regarding important events, and that is where proclamations from councils become very, very important.
Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. It's a bit of a sadder council report for myself. I know, like many, I was pretty saddened to learn over the weekend of the passing of Mr. Les Clay. He'd spent 60 of his amazing 91 years here in the township, and anybody who had the pleasure of of meeting or working with Mr. Clay can attest to how passionate he was, not just about his rhododendrons, but just about ensuring that Langley overall had a place that would forever be showcased for nature. And the time and effort and just the personal donation that he made of his unique tree and plant collection, as well as his work to create the rose garden on the site, has really made the Derrick Doubleday Arboretum what it is. He was an astounding volunteer in this community. He won the HG Stafford Good Citizen of the Year Award. He's going to be missed by a lot in our community. I sincerely hope we can find a way to properly commemorate him at some point. So, thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Maybe we could plant a tree for that gentleman on Arbor Day. But on another note, I did want to say that I did attend the International Women's Day, and I did want to comment to it was a great opportunity for those that participated, and my colleagues from the Rotary. We've been putting it on for a number of years. But I did want one last thing that Councillor Bailey pointed out about December 6, 1989. It's been called a Remembrance Day for École Polytech, and that was 14 women were killed and 14 were injured. And a number of years ago, when I was teaching, we took our students down to the train station there in Vancouver, and there's 14 rocks in a circle, and the student said to us, well, why are we standing here? And what are these rocks for? And those rocks were in memory for the 14 women were killed, and we explained the circumstances, and it was a moving event, and it's good for educators to keep passing that on and that students can remember. And again, International Women's Day was a success. Thank you.
Great. So with that, I move on to items for information and 1 through 6. Does council have any member of council have any discussion items and 1 through 6? Questions? None. Move on to motions arising from information 01. Council approve the RC PAC work plan. Anybody wish to move that?
Yeah, I will.
Moved by Councillor Van Popte. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Any discussion on 01? Seeing none, call the question on 01. That carries unanimously. 02, provide an update on Salishan Place. Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Van Popte. Any discussion on 02? Councillor Van Popte.
Yeah, can we make sure that we also get the update as well? It's a little bit, yeah, as co-chair on that committee, not being able to speak to it, it would be nice if council had updated information on what's happening with the museum. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Councillor Martins.
Yes, thank you. 02 as well. I know that the conversations come up at the Heritage Advisory Committee. I know they would also like to have an update. If we can somehow get that information to that committee as well, that would be great.
Mr. Bracken, I believe that can just be done. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Councillor Ferguson?
I also 02 as well. I cry every time I think of that. We've certainly been following that for a while. And Annie, maybe you give us some Cole's notes or something, or a little bit of intel. Any idea when we'll be opening those doors?
Still dealing with some of the deficiencies, so at this point, we're best to do some research and put it in a memo.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other discussion on 02? Seeing none, call the question on 02. Carries unanimously. 03, council work plan for the Seniors Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on 03? Seeing none, call the question on 03. Carries unanimously. P1, Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Some folks might recognize that there's been some slight wording changes made to this motion from when it was submitted previously, but that was specifically to make sure that the intent of this motion can be incorporated in the process that's already underway, studying 202 as a whole. But I do think that this specific area, with its proximity to a park, school, obviously it's in an incline, so speed's an issue. So I think that this requires its own focus within that broader process. So thank you.
Any discussion on P1? Nope, seeing none, call the question on P1.
Excuse me? Can we get a seconder on that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
P1. Oh. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
I was looking at you, Mr. Mayor, just very, very quickly.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Item number 2, potential cost. Now, if there's some costs and cost concerns, will the staff come back and bring it to our attention at budget time or at another time, if I may, through the chair? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Great. Call the question on P1. That carries with Councillor Rent opposed. P2, I will move it. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on P2? Right, seeing none, I'll call the question on P2. That carries unanimously. Any other business? Councillor Martins, go ahead. Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Thank you. I just have a question. In the agenda package that I got, there is a page that has a calendar for all of us of events. I noticed March was revised March 6, 2024, and it shows here that there is an event from 4 to 5 p.m. The Mayor's Task Force on the Langley Regional Airport being held at the airport boardroom. Council has not received any information on this task force, so I was hoping to find out what the purpose is of it. Perhaps the composition, is there representation from the council? And lastly, if it's open to the public to attend, just thinking about when this topic came up a number of meetings back, and there was a lot of people who were interested from the aviation industry. So if I could get some clarification on that, that would be great.
Mr. Bacon?
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is actually a mayor standing committee formed by the mayor. The traditional process is the committee at its first meeting will be looking at its terms of reference and expanding, narrowing, focusing, etc. In this circumstance, a standing committee can have any name that it chooses to have, and in this case, it's chosen to go by using the term task force, which ordinarily could be construed otherwise, such as a select committee, but we have verified that this is a mayor's standing committee, and that there's 3 members of council, 3 members of the public, and it's proceeding with its first meeting as in accordance with the calendar. And as such, the meeting, oh, sorry, just be advised, the meeting I think may have been moved. We'll have to, we know when?
Same time, Santa River.
Oh, sorry. Location's been changed, so it's now here, not as in accordance with the calendar. And as is tradition, unless there's a determination by the committee to go into closed, by the standing committee to go into a closed session, it would otherwise be open to the public.
Thank you. So, so in the Salmon River Room tomorrow night, still the same date at 4 o'clock? Okay, and you said 3 members of council. Are you able to advise who the representatives are?
Yes. It's the mayor, Councillor Pratt, and Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I have 2 things, but I want to follow up on Councillor Martin's item there, and thank you very much for flagging that. I missed it. Is it normal practice for a mayor to strike a standing committee and not advise council of that?
Mr. Bacon?
Okay, so I've never seen it in the 24 years other than this year that I've been on council.
I guess the practice does tend to vary from mayor to mayor and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. When time permits, on occasion there may be a notification given at a prior meeting, or it may have been something that's developed in and around there, or that is being relied upon to have the information disseminated via the calendar.
Okay, so I would like to know how many people on council knew this standing committee was being created.
Mr. Bacon?
I would presume, and I could be incorrect on this, at least 3 would be aware. The balance, I'm not sure of any discussions that were actually had or held. Again, it could have been that another practice quite often done is to actually announce things more formally after a terms of reference has actually been adopted or created, because that sometimes answers a lot of the questions that are being raised.
Oh, well, that's putting the cart after the horse, but yeah, I didn't know about it. Are the people who are on the committee, are you aware, Councillor Pratt? Were you aware you were on the committee?
When it showed up in my calendar notification.
Oh, okay, so there was no discussions ahead of time about this, it just appeared? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I think this is very disrespectful to council, to cut people out. We just had a discussion around International Women's Day, and why are the women on this council being left out of the discussions on this council? I don't get that. Sorry.
Okay, any other business?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Councilor Richter.
Okay, items distributed to council on March 7th. It's item number 26 on page, it starts on page 87, but it goes on for a few pages. Anyway, on page 88 at the top, there is a memo there that was sent to the school trustees, mayor and council, MLA Dykeman, the Minister of Education, and it says, our school wants the new field the TOL is offering. Attached is the proposal. And this particular document goes on to say that Eric Woodward sent me a list of the schools and what he has offered Superintendent Mel in meetings. D.W. Poppy, 2 new fields, Noel Booth, 2 new fields, new field at Langley Fine Arts, and field at Fort Langley Elementary. Total budget up to $25 million. Did council ever discuss this or authorize this? Like, was this offer actually made?
Mr. Bracken?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the language might be a bit, I guess, premature in terms of what traditional process would look like. Generally, what we would see is discussions at the staff level where there would be ideas that would be exchanged, and they're not really considered formal offers. They're actually ideas for exploration, and I suspect that's what this is focusing on. That sometimes then goes forward to include the occasional conversation that may be had between a council member or a school trustee. It's I think more in the preliminary, discussion stage than it is something that would be necessary for council to vote on or to adjudicate upon, simply because it's too early in that process.
Well, if council is making an offer and it includes $25 million of a budget, I would think council should be involved in that discussion. Don't we have to authorize the money? Like, has the money been authorized?
That is correct. The money has not been authorized because it hasn't come to the council table at this point. Again, I think as I alluded to in the previous comments, when there are considerations that are being entertained, they are sometimes undertaken with the view to narrowing or to limiting some of the scope. And so if there was to be some sort of consensus or arrangement that was going to be needed to be followed up upon, it would require a motion and an adjudication by council. I don't really view this as being much more at this point than an exploration of ideas or concepts.
Mr. Backen, were you, as the senior staff person, aware of this discussion? Of $25 million expenditure on 4 new fields?
I was not personally involved in the conversation, but I am aware that such conversations are going on quite frequently in terms of concepts and discussion items. Quite often, if they don't appear to be coming to any sort of fruition, no further action is taken. And at this point, we're not taking any further action other than, as we may have discussed in council closed sessions, as to property matters.
Okay. Well, I'm registering a concern and hopefully a complaint right now that discussions like this should not be taking place away from the council table. And promises like this should not be being made without council sanction. This is not good governance. This is not transparent, and it's not fair to the community that elected a group of 9. They didn't elect 1 person, they elected 9 people. If this is the way the township is operating now, we're in big trouble. Thank you.
Councilor Van Popta?
Yeah, I've heard recently that there's some councillors that have been invited or having a dinner with school board trustees. And I wanted to, I haven't been invited, and I just want to know if this is something official or if this is just worked out amongst certain trustees and certain council members here at the table.
I think it's the latter.
Oh,
Pretty,
okay.
pretty clearly. Yeah.
Okay, well, that would be,
But it's okay for them to do
but
it.
okay, yeah. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
No, I think you have. Councillor Victor?
Yes. An invitation was sent to all members of council with regards to participating in a meeting, a school board dinner. And if any member of council was interested in meeting with the school board, could they please respond? I responded, and I can't speak for the other people at this table, but shortly after I responded, I got an email back saying, we have 2 dates set aside. Which date is the best date for you? And then there was a third email that said, this is the date that has the greater consensus. So if council members are not responding to emails that they're getting from other governmental agencies like the school board that sent this out in the first place, asking if all of council was interested in a meeting with the school board, then that's their problem. It's not the school board's problem. The school board has been above board and transparent about this, and it's not the problem of the members of this council who expressed their interest in meeting with the school board, particularly after a certain standing committee or task force was dissolved by one member of this council. Thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate you raising it. I think it's appropriate to evolve and not respond to every jab. I think here, though, however, typical process is that when something like that is coordinated and emailed to all members, that would be coordinated through the council support system. So that would go to the council support clerk, and then it would be relayed that this was been scheduled. None of that occurred here. There were individual members of council arranging a dinner for themselves, and I relied on the council support system to make us aware of that, and none of that occurred. So but in the end, if Trustee Fox and Councillor Richter want to have dinner on taxpayer dime, that's their prerogative. Councillor Ferguson, go ahead.
Well, I think there's more discussion that we need to have on this, and I believe there will be. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the councillor does know that.
Yeah, of course she does. Okay, is there any other business? Councillor Martins.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, we were all emailed an invitation originally. And I'm pretty sure then that if there's other people at this table that are wanting to participate in this dinner, if they reached out to the school board, I'm sure they would make a space for them at the table. I don't think it's some sort of an exclusive event. I just want to say that rather than making grand statements, how about just say, hey, I'd like to join. That would be great.
Yeah, no, there's a process that's followed typically, and it wasn't followed here. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I mean, this actually took me by surprise. I'm one of those people who's going to go meet
Also
with...
spent more time on it than it's worth.
I'm going to go speak with the school board because I was invited to. Did I necessarily think, oh, this should be going through the proper procedure? Maybe, but I figured it's not really a nefarious organization. So it's a tricky one here because I know there's a lot of passion behind this conversation, and it's unfortunate that it's become so passionate. I'm looking forward to talking with some council or some council colleagues there, some school trustees there. Who knows what'll come out of it, but I think it was a prerogative of this council ourselves to potentially consider a dinner that I'm sure will be organized more formally at some point.
No, I think that'd be great. I think it's unfortunate when a date is chosen in which certain people aren't available and they happen to know that. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, I replied to that. Now I'll be going to that dinner also, and because I like having conversations with other entities and that kind of stuff. But I do it. I believe I went back through Jen when I answered it.
And by that time, it was anyway. It doesn't matter. We spent more time on this than is required, but I'm sure that our absence will be noted. And brought up here in about a month or so. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yes, I have found the original email. It was sent from Claire Pereira, who is the executive assistant to Mal Gill, Superintendent of Schools. It was sent on Thursday, February 8th, 2024 at 12:36 p.m. It was sent to E. Woodward at tol.ca, T. Bailey at tol.ca, S. Ferguson at tol.ca, M. Kunst at tol.ca, B. Martins at tol.ca, M. Pratt at tol.ca, K. Richter at tol.ca, R. Rent at tol.ca, and M. Van Popta at tol.ca. It was CC'd to M. Backen and Jason Winslade. And they said they are writing as a follow-up to their letter dated February 7th, 2024. The Langley School District believes in a positive relationship with all its partners. The Township of Langley and the school district have shared a strong relationship focused on what is best for the students and families of Langley. With that, the district, both trustees and district leadership, are inviting the mayor, all council members, and senior staff to dinner at a date which best fits your schedule. The single agenda item for the evening will be reestablishing relationships. If you would be interested in coming to a dinner meeting with trustees and senior staff, please reply to this email. We will reach out to all those interested to find a date that works. Now, what's nefarious about that? There's nothing nefarious. That is a reasonable, respectful request from an agency in this community that we should be working close with. And those of us who replied, who had the courtesy and took the time to reply, we did nothing wrong. The ones who didn't bother to reply, that's another question. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Backen, would you characterize that, we work very closely with the school district. I mean, I believe we're investing tens of millions of dollars in facility adjacent to school district facilities. I believe there's much work going on between the school district and the Township of Langley. Would you agree with that? I mean, pretty obvious, no?
No, there certainly is, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think it's just politicians making hay. I mean, if we had spent this amount of time on trying to fix a field for a kid, maybe we could have accomplished something. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we've moved on to other business.
Yeah, please.
It's actually funny enough, it just came up, and it's a request through yourself to staff. With the transportation mobility strategy public engagement starting, I'm wondering if in the future, when we send out notifications across TOL, that the subject line for something as important as the TMS is not road closures and traffic impacts. I can only speak for myself, and I'm somebody who pays a lot of attention to streets for some reason. I wouldn't necessarily click through that thinking I was participating in the transportation and mobility strategy. So I'm wondering if we could potentially send that out again.
Mr. Backen, do you think we can maybe make it more clear that there's a range of issues? Like maybe just improve that and just confer and see what you can do? Yeah, great. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, are we doing items into closed?
No, I'll ask for that specifically and come back. Is there any other business? Okay, we'll get a motion to resolve into special close. Does anybody have any items? Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got one intergovernmental, please.
Intergovernmental. Is there any other items in special close? No. Get a motion to resolve into special closed. Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Pratt. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Get a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Van Popta, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thanks.